Alright, should be up and live. Alright, should be up and live. Checking the audio here real quick. Alright everyone, good evening. Big weather day today, and for a lot of it, it's been just watching to see if storms developed in the areas that were favorable for severe weather. A bit slower development than some of the models over the past 24 hours were looking. We had some severe weather earlier this in early afternoon, right around lunchtime in Florida. I had some prior engagements, so we didn't cover that. But a couple tornadoes, a couple water spouts came ashore on the Florida Gulf Coast around the Tampa area, and then a big chonker of a wedge over by St. Augustine, Florida. We're watching an area here, actually a couple areas. One in especially eastern West Virginia. There was one storm that tracked north and east, east of Charleston in West Virginia. It's now up in a little less favorable environment. It had rotation on it pretty consistently, but it never really got its act together. Every time it kind of started to tighten up, it ingested some rain-cooled air from some storms that were out ahead of it. That storm has finally gone below severe limits. We can just check and see if there's any rotation still on it. There is maybe a little broad rotation, but if I go back a couple minutes here in the radar scan, you can see even down in this area was a little bit tighter, and then certainly tighter rotation back further. So it tried, but it's I think finally run out of juice as it's come across now north of 79 here. The West Virginia DOT traffic cam that's down in the corner of your screen is from this area around Sutton along 79. So if we see any weather pickup, you might in that area. Now, the other spot that's been favorable for tornadic development has been North Carolina. I've been watching storms develop in the Carolinas, especially on the slopes of the Appalachians. They've now come out a little closer to the Piedmont, and we do have a tornado warning now. Also 1-inch hail. This is the area east of Hickory and just south and east of the Newton area in North Carolina. A bit of a radar hole here. If you live in North Carolina, please ask your politicians to get you some more radar sites. The radar that we're using here is out of Greenville, South Carolina. We can get a radar from Western Virginia or the Raleigh-Durham area. But this is a really populated area. Charlotte, Hickory, Kannapolis, up to High Point, Winston-Salem, that does not have a really good radar site. So we can use the local radar out of the international airport, but the airport radars are designed to see low level and storms in the very vicinity of the airport. So you can see here it doesn't extend out very far. We can get a decent look at this storm, but still it's not the best tool. There is rotation here. A lot of these storms in the Carolinas right now are fairly small in size, but they've had mid-level rotation, and we're just kind of seeing if that rotation can get to the ground level. This one isn't quite as impressive as it was right before it was warned for a tornado, but again, it's a small storm, so the rotation area is fairly compact as well. It's just not very strong at the moment. And now what the problem is, it's gone through this area around Maiden and lifting northeast. It's going to continue to get away from the Charlotte International Airport radar, which means we're going to push the end of this radar capability and have to go to our more broad and upper level radars. So again, we're seeing some rotation at the upper levels. It's going to be very hard today to see the ground truth from the radar perspective. Now, certainly if we get reports of the tornadoes, reports from law enforcement, spotters, things like that, that'll help. You can see some of these other cells are rotating, at least at the mid-levels. The one behind it, down towards Lincolnton, also has some rotation on it between Lincolnton and High Shoals. So that's going to be one to watch right in this area. We've been working again on some graphics here too. So we have some graphics here. And yeah, we can do some more fancy things right now. Again, that DOT cam is out of West Virginia. We're watching that storm that had some rotation on it. So we can see what the weather's like on that as well. So again, this is a new tornado warning. Radar indicated. Also 1-inch hail is possible with this storm. And this was a storm that was capable of producing a tornado 4 miles southeast of Newton or near Maiden, moving northeast at 30. So we can see this area here. It was warned down here near Maiden. It's now just east of the Newton area. It's headed up towards Claremont, Catawba. I think I'm saying that right. And then eventually, if that holds together, the areas, especially west of Statesville in North Carolina, would be under the gun for the tornado threat along US Highway 64. That's towards Scotts and Stony Point. So if you're up in that area, you have a few minutes to get to your tornado safe space. I think we're going to get another warning here too. So we came on just right as the storms in North Carolina are maturing. And also there is a new tornado watch for this whole area in southwestern Virginia and western North Carolina. It looks like it doesn't really go into South Carolina. So it's really just this area around Charlotte up to the areas around Roanoke that have a new tornado watch. We'll take a read of that in a few minutes. But yeah, now we're seeing this rotation in this cell here by Wilkesboro. So it's a radar indicated tornado. And it is capable of producing a tornado over Fair Plains or over North Wilkesboro, moving northeast at 30. So we can see here, this is going to come up on the north side of Wilkesboro towards Fair Plains, Hayes, Knottville, Mulberry, and then eventually it's Dougherty, DeHart, Moxley, Lomax, Austin. You are all in the path. Abishers. Generally, this is going to be along Trap Hill Road. So if you live in that area or work in that area, along Trap Hill Road between Fair Plains and Wilkesboro and the areas up closer to, I think that is Trap Hill in North Carolina. That is the area that this tornado warning is covering. This is generally now north of 421 and north of the immediate downtown Wilkesboro. However, this area right here, Fair Plains and North Wilkesboro, still has the rotation here, and you can see that rotation. Again, we're seeing mid-level, so we're seeing pretty far from the radar site right now. We can take a peek and see if there's any CC drops. But again, this is pretty high level, so it's going to take a strong tornado to lift any debris up to the levels that we're looking at. Good news is then right now we're not seeing any here in the area of the rotation. But that doesn't mean that there's not a tornado on the ground. We just don't have a great low-level view of this area here. Coming up right over the Fair Plains area, Brookwood, Mountain Manor, over towards Knottville and Mulberry. They're next in line for this tornadic storm. Again, you can see there are more areas of circulation in some of these other cells. This one is looking a little vigorous here on the next cell down from Maiden, so we'll see if that gets something. And then this area here around Claremont, Newton, and Catawba, if I'm saying that right, This area of tornado warned rotation is approaching the I-40 corridor. Again, not really seeing anything on the CC, but that does not mean that there's not a tornado on the ground. It just means we're looking at a pretty high altitude. See if we can get any better looks. The southern tornado warning has a worse look, and this is maybe about the same look. But yeah, we're watching this area here around Fair Plains, Mulberry, Knottville, and Hayes. A tornado warning. And then an area now north and east of Newton coming up towards Claremont and Catawba and the I-40 corridor. And then other areas of rotation we're going to have to keep watching here as switch the radar back to the high res. There's some rotation down in this storm here east of Lincolnton, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. It would be coming up in general towards the same direction as that storm here by Claremont. There's also some rotation in the storm south of Wilkesboro, out on 115. So we'll have to watch that. And then this tornado warned rotation here near Fair Plains. So two areas of tornado warned rotation right now, both in North Carolina. We have one here lifting up to the north and northeast near Claremont, and one by Fair Plains. It's kind of in west central North Carolina. Beyond that, we have a severe thunderstorm warning for this cluster of storms that's tucked back behind these areas of rotation. That's being warned for some high winds and not too much on the hail, but mostly 60-mile-an-hour winds are the main threat with this line of storms. And that's now tracking all along the Wilkesboro area, down toward Taylorsville, and also down into the Newton area. Kind of two distinct areas of tornadic development that we're watching. This new tornado watch in Virginia and North Carolina, and then a tornado watch that hasn't had any tornado warnings yet. A couple tornado possible tags on severe thunderstorms earlier. Those are now moved off and to the northeast. We're seeing that traffic cam actually is right around the Sutton area, and it looks like this storm has tucked back behind this camera, so we may not see much on that traffic cam out there. But still a strong cell. Let me check. It doesn't have nearly as much rotation as it did earlier. It was originally a severe thunderstorm tornado possible, but that's really weakened. And it looks like the storm behind it also had some rotation earlier. It's weakened as well. So you can see why those warnings are dropped. Otherwise, if you're in West Virginia right now, there's a big flood threat, especially with all the hills and valleys in here. So it's going to be a rough night for flooding, and you can see all those flood warnings down from Wheeling down to Charleston, and then further into West Virginia. There's some storms that developed behind that main cluster of storms that is now in West Virginia, near the Lexington area and east. Those are below severe limits right now. And Ohio, it looked like Ohio might get a higher severe weather chance, even up towards the Pittsburgh area. That just hasn't materialized. So far, the instability has stayed below the Ohio River and also well east of the Ohio River. I hear another tornado warning, so I think we're going to get our third one, and it is for that area rotation that's now coming up south and east of Wilkesboro. So we have this rotation point here, south and east of Wilkesboro, and then we have the originally warned rotation moving northeast. This one is going to come up across the 421 corridor headed towards Jonesville in North Carolina. So 2 areas here. Also maybe some hail in here with those purples. Let's see what they're warning here this for. Another radar indicated tornado warning. Moving northeast at 35. It is located near Windy Gap, or 7 miles southeast of Wilkesboro. So if you're in the Wilkesboro area, you're not technically in a tornado warning. You have 2 tornado warnings, one to the north of you and then one to the east of you. Good idea to maybe hunker down, let this line at least pass, and it wouldn't be a good idea right now in Wilkesboro to travel east on 421 or north on, I think it was Trap Hill Road. Some of these state routes up in here with the tornado warnings ongoing. Just around the Mulberry area now. Mulberry and Hayes. And then rotation a little stronger looking down on this cell here. Again, we're seeing higher level rotation because this is a little far away from the closest radar sites. But this area about 7 miles southeast of Wilkesboro, towards the Windy Gap, Fishing Creek, Antioch area along 421. That's lifting northeast toward Rhonda and Jonesville. Beyond that, there's other storms that have rotation. The National Weather Service is just picking out the ones that we've seen stronger rotation on, but there are rotation points in a lot of these cells at the moment. So we're seeing the tornado chances actually pick up a little bit here. Just south of there towards the Taylorsville area, we have a new severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag, as that lifts over the Taylorsville area right now. That also has close to 1-inch hail and then 60-mile-an-hour wind chances. So if you're in the Taylorsville, I think with all of these cells rotating a bit and quite a few having the tornado warnings recently come out, if you can, take your tornado precautions in this severe thunderstorm warning with the tornado possible tag. We can see how the environment is conducive for rotating cells, and those can and do produce tornadoes. And we also just don't have a great look at the ground level, so we don't know if there's tornadoes ongoing or not. Unless we get confirmation from a spotter or from law enforcement, it's going to be tough to pick these out here today. So that original rotation is now over about I-40 in this area here north and east of Claremont. Not seeing any big CC ball drop or anything indicating a debris ball, something like that. So we'll see how that goes. This area here, just a lot of contamination, I think. If there is a tornado, it would be actually in this area here where there's likely no CC drop. So I think right now it's clean. Again, we're just not seeing anything at the low levels though. This rotation point is over this area between Edgewood and Windy Gap, and also Antioch and Fishing Creek. Especially this area around Fishing Creek would be, looks like where the rotation is the strongest here. And again, not seeing any CC drop in the area that co-locates with the rotation. Same for this area. Not seeing any CC drop in this area of rotation that's now up along Trap Hill Road by Doherty and DeHart, coming up towards Moxley and eventually towards Abishers. Also in the warning are Austin and Doughton and Thurmond, all in North Carolina at the moment. Some overlapping warnings here. This area up towards Lomax, Roaring River, Della Plain, Antioch, up towards Rhonda and Pleasant Hill, and Jonesville in North Carolina are under a tornado warning for this area of rotation. that's now coming up right along 421 by Fishing Creek in Antioch and Windy Gap. Yeah, it looks like audio is good, so just checking everything here, since we do have quite a few tornado warnings. And then the original warning that came out here was for this area that's now rotating up along I-40 north and east of Claremont. Again, not seeing any CC drop, so that's a good sign. But it doesn't mean that there's not a tornado. There could be one at low levels, and we're just not seeing that in the CC readings. It takes the stronger the tornado, the more it can lift debris up into the atmosphere, and we're looking at a pretty high level here. This tornado watch, by the way, that is now out for North Carolina goes until 11. So it's going to be a little bit of a long night here. This area had a pretty good chance to see some strong storms with instability picking back up after early morning clouds and rain cleared out. So we're seeing that now as storms have come off the Appalachians and they're now in kind of the Piedmont area here, with a lot of these storms showing signs of rotation. So another unwarned part is up towards Union Hill. We'll see if that gets any warning. But right now, and even a little bit of rotation now back into the Wilkesboro area. Let's take a look and see what the reflectivity is showing, because it's a bit of a mess right now around Wilkesboro. So yeah, we have 3 cells. Right now there's a bit of a bow. It's a severe warned bow echo, but it does have a bit of rotation actually right in this Wilkesboro area, right about in there. We have our original tornado warning going up that way towards Trap Hill, and then we have our other warning that's coming up around the Antioch area, headed generally towards the Rhonda area. It appears like this bow's headed a little more east-northeast than the other cells that are headed more north-northeast. So a pretty dangerous little cluster of storms here around the Wilkesboro, North Carolina area, with multiple tornado warnings. And then that cell that's further south, near the Claremont area and I-40, and that's going to be headed up towards the US Highway 64 corridor between Statesboro and Stony Point. Also in the warning, it looks like a town called Fairview Park. Trying to get in close in case there's people that are looking from some of these small towns. So right now, a few different tornado warned storms. A little bit of rotation still down in the cell by Maiden. So we'll have to watch this one. And I wonder if that's why they continue this tornado warning. They didn't trim it back. Like back here, they trimmed some of this warning back. I wonder if they decided not to trim it back because there's still some rotation in this second cell. That they've trimmed off the Maiden area. And Newton as well, but they haven't trimmed off this area along 16. So this tornado warning may be covering these 2 points of rotation. There's one, I think, right in that area along 16, and then the originally warned area is now north of 40, headed north and east. So another dangerous little cluster of cells. Check CCs again. Still no CC drop up here, so that's a good sign that there's at least not a strong tornado on the ground. And then the CC gets messy down here, but I believe this is just some contamination. Yeah, I think that's just contamination there. So nothing up in here right now. That's a good sign. Checking in on our rotation here near Antioch, coming up towards the Delaplane and Roaring River, and eventually here in a couple minutes up towards Rhonda in North Carolina. Still not seeing any big CC drops or anything, so that's a good sign. If we would, it would be this area between Delaplane and Antioch, and you can see that area is pretty clear of any CC. And this area, it looks like, has weakened a little bit, this area of rotation. What's left of that is up towards Moxley and Doherty, and then headed up towards the Abishers area. But that area has significantly weakened. You can see it was stronger just a couple scans ago as it came across DeHart and Doherty, and then it's gotten a lot weaker and broader up in the Moxley area. So still watching that, as well as watching some other areas of interest. Some rotation up here north and east of Union Hill. The area of warned rotation coming towards the Rhonda area. And then the rotation that's now west of Statesville along the I-40 corridor, coming up near the Scotts and Stony Point, North Carolina areas. No big CC drop, so that's good. Looks like the storms are still behaving themselves somewhat here. And then maybe some other rotation down here along 16 near Drums Crossroads. We're getting a little far from the radar site, so it's hard to see this part of the storm very good, but I think there's some rotation in here. So, and you're still in the tornado warning. So if you're in this area from Drums Crossroads up towards Murray's Mill, I want you to stay in your safe space a few more minutes. It's good to just stay hunkered down. And if this does continue to move north and east, we can get a little better look at this rotation. This one's still, I think, our strongest area rotation at the moment, coming up here towards Delaplane and Roaring River, and then generally headed towards that Rhonda area. Next in line after Rhonda is Pleasant Hill, Jonesville, Arlington, and Birch. Also North Elkin and Benham are in that area, Lomax. And then areas of rotation up here near Mulberry, and that weakening area rotation near Moxley and Abishers. And then a lot of strong wind coming across the Wilkesboro area immediately. So far, the area right in immediate downtown Wilkesboro has not gone under tornado warning, but you've had a couple areas of rotation that have surrounded the Wilkesboro area. This one now coming up towards Rhonda and Roaring River is a decent one for how far out we're seeing. Again, some other areas of rotation that I'm seeing here, even up towards the Galax area on, this is the Virginia-North Carolina state line here. And then a little area of rotation between Bottom and Low Gap, headed up towards the Round Peak area. Let me make sure that one's headed, yeah, that one's headed generally north-northeast as well. So that area rotation, unwarned at the moment. It's probably just the Weather Service sees it's a little broad, but one to watch because it looks similar to the other warned areas of rotation. This one's maybe our tightest one, right here around Roaring River. And I'm seeing a few CC interesting points, and they are switching this to an observed tornado. So we do have our first, I think, observed tornado of the day. Confirmed tornado over Roaring River. They're going to call this a radar confirmed damaging tornado. So they're seeing the same thing I think we are here, is some CC that's co-located. Again, we're seeing, I've said it a few times already, but we're seeing some upper level away from the radar sites here. So it's going to take a decently strong tornado to lift this debris signature. But right in this area here over Roaring River, you can see the debris signature is co-located with the rotation point, and we have a pretty strong signature of winds going like this. So this is your rotation here, and this is your TDS, your tornado debris signature. That's going to be over the Roaring River area, over North Carolina 268, between Roaring River going up towards Rhonda. Luckily, I'm not seeing a ton of community names up in here, so that means we're at least avoiding some of the bigger towns and villages. But up towards Pleasant Hill, if you're in this warning box, I want you to definitely stay in your safe space. Tornado confirmed here near Roaring River, up towards the Rhonda area. This warning goes as far north and east as Birch, Jonesville, Arlington, and Pleasant Hill, all in North Carolina right now. So that is a confirmed tornado. The rotation that was up near Abishers and Moxley, that has weakened significantly and it has expired. So that is a good sign there. Still an area rotation up here along US 64 near Scotts, Stony Point, and just north and west of Statesville. So if you're in the Statesville area, part of the Statesville area is in a tornado warning. So please take that lightly, especially Greencrest, Kentwood Park, Sherwood Forest, and then definitely if you're in Scotts and Stony Point, the area rotation is right there up along US 64. It's going to hopefully keep getting north and east, so it should avoid the areas of downtown Statesville. Should be out of that immediate area of rotation. However, there are other points of rotation that we're watching in some of the cells that are around this area. But here we can focus in. Also watching that area rotation up towards Low Gap looks a little stronger than it did a few minutes ago, so that one may require a warning if that trend line continues. Otherwise, we have an observed tornado located over Roaring River or near Rhonda, moving northeast at 35. It's a radar confirmed damaging tornado, and it's hard to see being this far away from the radar site. But the rotation here is right in this area, just between Roaring River and Rhonda. So that may be it here, just kind of a little bit off of the rotation site. And sometimes tornadoes do tend to wiggle as they go up in the atmosphere. So seeing it this far away, it may be co-located. We're seeing an extension. Yeah, they're going to extend this warning out for an observed tornado. Near Rhonda, radar confirmed, and it is going to go out further, impacting Elkin, Fairview, Jonesville, Dobson, Rhonda, Mountain Park, and Level Cross. So we've just extended this warning. This now covers Jonesville for a tornado coming up between Rhonda and Stony Gap, I think that was. Roaring River. Between Roaring River and Rhonda, have a confirmed tornado that's going to be headed up towards Pleasant Hill. Jonesville is in the warning. Benham, North Elkin, Poplar Springs, Mulberry, Austin, Lomax, up towards Thurman, Union Hill, Mountain Park, Salem Fork, and Dobson are all in the warning, as well as New Hope, Turkey Ford, Blackwater, Copeland, Fairview, and Stony Knoll. This is a warning that also covers US or Interstate 77. So if you have interest along 77, especially north of Jonesville, I would hold up on that. Really between 74 and the interchange with 74 and Jonesville, would not want to travel this part of the interstate here, because this confirmed tornado is going to continue going north and east, and if it holds that path, it could get very close or cross this 77 corridor here. So there is some other areas of rotation. This one that has weakened maybe a little bit towards the Low Gap area, and not seeing any debris signature, so that's a good sign. Don't see anything over here towards Abishers. That rotation has wound down. This is the one that we're watching here with a debris signature now showing up a little stronger on the CC here, north and just north of Rhonda, and now north of Roaring River. So we can see here, as it came across Delaplane, there may be something right in here that we can see on the CC. That's somewhat stayed the same. And then we saw near Roaring River, the CC picked up and was co-located with the rotation. That's now picked up, and its co-location here between Rhonda and Benham, and also just south and west of Pleasant Hill. This area of observed confirmed tornado is headed up your way now. North of Rhonda, between Rhonda, Pleasant Hill, and Benham. Please be in your safe spaces here. This is along 268 between Rhonda and Pleasant Hill. And this is also along Austin Little Mountain Road. So 268 and Austin Little Mountain Road. There's some other road names in here we can pick out. Macedonia Church Road and Little Elkin Church Road. If you live up in this area here, especially west of Jonesville right now, this area has an observed tornado coming up towards the Benham area. So we can see the CC drop and the rotation co-located. This is also generally headed up towards the Pleasant Ridge area. So if you're north of this rotation and observed tornado, Pleasant Ridge, please be in your safe space. That's lowest level of an interior room. So put as many layers of walls between you and the outside as possible. If you have a basement or a tornado shelter, those are obviously better than first floor. But if you don't have a basement, bathroom, interior closet, something without windows and away from the exterior walls. Again, area rotation here and observed tornado headed up northeast towards Benham. Also in the warning, Poplar Springs, Mulberry, North Elkin, Pleasant Hill, Jonesville, up towards Thurman, Mountain Park, Union Hill, Salem Fork, Mulberry, Union Cross, Dobson, New Hope, and Blackwater. If I'm not saying your exact town, hopefully you can know some of the bigger towns that are around you, and that helps locate where you are. Still another tornado warning ongoing down here. This area rotation I think is about out of the warning, but it's an area that's north and west of Statesville along 115. Looks like it's now north of Scotts. So it's an area here. We'll see if they continue or extend a warning. If it does continue, it would be up towards the areas around Central and Charles in North Carolina. There also was an area rotation that's further down. It's hard to see this far away from the radar site, but there is a little bit of an area rotation here around Eufaula and Catawba and Sunrise Beach. So that's one to keep an eye on as well. Otherwise, a larger severe thunderstorm warning for tornado possible, 3/4 inch hail, and 60-mile-an-hour winds. That includes the areas around Statesville, Troutman, all along 77, really from Mooresville up 77 towards Harmony, and then also as far north and east as the area around Bermuda Run. That's a severe thunderstorm warning, tornado possible, 60-mile-an-hour winds, and 3/4 inch hail. But the main one we're focusing on right now is this area of observed tornado now north and west of Jonesville, right around the Pleasant Hill area and headed up towards Benham and North Elkin. This road here is Austin Trap Hill Road. So the rotation's right along that at the moment. And yeah, you can see there's still some CC drop right in there. So very likely still an ongoing tornado as that comes up in the general direction here of Benham, Pleasant Ridge, North Elkins. You're going to want to be in your safe spaces too. Poplar Springs, Pleasant Hill. Obviously, it's pretty much right on you there. But this is quickly moving up towards North Elkins and Benham. Next in line, Poplar Springs and Pleasant Ridge. And then next in line after that is Mulberry, Mountain Park, Thurmond, Union Cross. So if you're in this warning, anywhere in this area from Jonesville up to Dobson, please be in your safe spot. We've had a radar confirmed tornado here that's been moving up and been on the ground for likely a few minutes. It's been there since the Rhonda area at least, and maybe even back a little further. May have been actually on the ground even a little further back towards the Delaplane and the Roaring River area as it came across and tightened up north of Antioch here. So I can actually look at that here. Yeah, so it's been on the ground for a decent pace here. And still looks like it has a CC drop in here. So for at least probably about 10 to 11 miles, we've seen a CC drop fairly co-located with a signature. Still indicating an observed tornado. See if this has been updated here. Has not been updated in a few minutes, but still seeing some CC mess up in this area here. And again, we're fairly far from the radar, so if you're just tuning in, we're decently far from the radar site, which makes it a little trickier. But this area of rotation or tornado is moving up right now in the North Elkin, Benham, Pleasant Ridge, and Poplar Springs, headed north and northeast towards Mulberry. And this is generally getting closer to the I-77 corridor, so that is a bit concerning as this area lifts north-northeast, and the I-77 pretty much goes almost north. So at some point you can just the path of that just interacts with the highway at some point here. Beyond the observed tornado, there were some stronger cells up in the area east of Charleston. Those have weakened a lot beyond severe limits. The camera down here is in the area around Sutton. There originally was a severe thunderstorm tornado possible in the Sutton area, but that has since gone below severe limits and moved out of this area. So just general thunderstorms up around Charleston and north, really all the way towards the Pittsburgh area. We do have another flash flood emergency. Pittsburgh has had rounds of heavy rain and storms, so this area here has a flash flood emergency for west central Allegheny County and north central Washington County in southwestern Pennsylvania. That goes until midnight, so please turn around, don't drown. We've had looks like between 2 and 3.5 inches of rain, and an additional 1 to 2 more inches are possible. This is an area of the country, there's a lot of hills and valleys and steep steep ravines and haulers. So that's an area that makes the flooding even that more dangerous. Back down here for our tornado warned storms, still has the observe tag going. Beyond that, we have the tornado possible severe thunderstorm warning. A couple areas of rotation, maybe still in this here, around the Statesville area, and around the area between Harmony and Love Valley. That area was tornado warned. This piece of rotation was tornado warned as it came across north and east. It's broadened a little bit, even though we're far from the radar site. You can tell it's a little more broad. So is this area here around Statesville and Troutman. We can see from the Charlotte Metro radar even some little points of rotation in this small little storm here. Yeah, the environment is just conducive of even these smaller cells showing some rotation. So we'll have to watch those storms as they come across the Charlotte Metro, but mostly still concerned with the observed tornado warning. And this area now that's between Pleasant Ridge and Mulberry. So it's back up here in the rain between Pleasant Ridge and Mulberry in North Carolina. And that's come northeast. It's going to be getting closer and closer to the highway, to 77. Next in line, Union Hill, Mountain Park, Salem Fork are all next in line up on the 77 corridor north of Jonesville. Jonesville's now been trimmed from the warning. We'll see now. They've also backed it off to radar indicated. So good news that is that we're not seeing a debris signature, just the radar indicated rotation. It has seemed to have broadened out a bit. But if a new tornado drops, it would be in this area here between Mountain Park, Mulberry, and Poplar Springs, up in this area here in North Carolina. And these would be rain wrapped here, so you're not going to see it coming. But the area rotation right in here, that's radar indicated now, was previously confirmed. And we can see what the CC looks like now. Yeah, we're not seeing the big CC drop like we did earlier. I think this is just contamination on the back side of the storm. Or maybe even some hail contamination there with that pink and purple, or also debris that was lofted previously. But that's not located with the debris or with the rotation, so that's not what we're watching here. But this area here looks a lot cleaner than it did a couple minutes ago. So I'd concur with the National Weather Service that we'll go back to that radar indicated tornado. Still a dangerous storm. You can see it has even a bit of a comma shape on it, with rotation here just west of 77 in the Mulberry area. And now this area of rotation would be right between Union Cross and Mountain Park, pretty much over the interstate here. So we're watching this area of rotation. Could produce a tornado, could tighten back up as that comes towards Salem's Fork. Dobson and New Hope in North Carolina are next in line. But if you're in this warning, please take it seriously here. We're now warning more of the line that's come up behind these individual cells. So they've definitely clustered together somewhat. And we're going to get tornado possible tag for this whole line. It's also being warned for 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That's going to impact the areas around Mount Airy, Elkin, Fairview, Flat Rock, Yadkinville, Jonesville, Dobson. And then further down, same situation here. Tornado possible, 3/4 inch hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. And that's going to affect the areas from Statesville, Moxville, Troutman, Catawba, Harmony, Lake Norman State Park, Sherrills Ford, Bandies, and Turnersburg. Again, some signs of rotation are still along this line here. So we do have to watch for these areas to tighten back up. A little area here northeast of Statesville, another area north of that along 77, maybe another area of rotation here just west of Yadkinville, and then that area of rotation now up north of Jonesville that was previously a radar confirmed tornado. So that's why this whole area has a severe thunderstorm tornado possible, just especially because we're not seeing it at the ground level. With the radars far away, the radar sites are up in closer to the Roanoke area. Now as this line marches east, we should be able to get some good views or better views as this comes towards the radar in the Raleigh-Durham area. But that's going to take a while. Even on that radar you can see some of this higher level rotation. So it's still showing up on multiple radars, but you have the rotation coming up by Dobson, rotation by Yadkinville, the rotation south of that. That's why this whole line now is getting a tornado possible tag on it. That's by Harmony, Statesville. Another little cell with some rotation. So far the ones that have been tornado warned were the ones that were out ahead of the line. So we'll see if that intensifies. That's up in an area just west of Kannapolis. A little cell here along Route 3. And we can put this into motion too, see if it's, see the trend line on that one. Yeah, so you can see that rotation. It came across Huntersville. And so another one to watch there as it lifts up past Kannapolis. Even some more rotation further down towards Wesley Chapel and Indian Trail. Still broad and weak, so we'll have to see if that one picks up. Just a bunch of these cells have little areas of rotation, and we've seen that those areas can spin up quickly and can produce tornadoes. This one was originally a radar observed tornado. That rotation is coming up along 77 by Dobson as it moves northeast. You can see the clouds and storms in that traffic cam in West Virginia here. This is near the Sutton, West Virginia area. It's definitely getting darker as those storms are just, I think, on the west side of this cam. If I think this cam is facing east-northeast, and the storms are just sitting just behind it. Maybe a bit of a shelf cloud. You can see some darker clouds just on the very edge of this camera. So that'll be interesting to see as we continue to watch that one. But area around Dobson, still want you to be in your safe places here for this tornado warned storm. Coming up towards Dobson, New Hope, Salem Fork, Turkey Ford, Blackwater, and if it holds together up towards the area around Pine Ridge and Oak Grove, where I-74 and I-77 meet up in north central North Carolina here. Beyond that, this is going to have blinding rain, and so it's rough driving anyway, but yeah, and then other areas of rotation Watching here between Jonesville and Yadkinville. And down here, just north of Harmony. And there that one goes. This is going to be a whack-a-mole of these rotations. As they tighten up, they're going to get tighter for a little bit and have a higher tornadic potential. And then they're going to quickly, weaken off like the one earlier did near Wilkesboro, and then now like the one here in Dobson is weaken. It's on a weakening trend for sure. So let's go take a look at this storm. It's for Surry County, Stokes County, and Yadkin County in north central North Carolina. It's a storm capable of producing a tornado located over Boonville, moving northeast at 35. So we can zoom in here, and yep, there's Boonville. So you can see this rotation in here, just like this, right around the Boonville area. This one has gotten tighter in the last couple trends, and you can see a bit of an appendage here. It's still kind of out ahead of this line that's been developing in the Carolinas. Another area rotation, still broad, would be down here near Houstonville and Eagles Mill, and they're going to extend I think a warning out for that too. Tornado possible now for that particular cell, just near Harmony. So no tornado warning on that one, but one that we'll watch for an increase in rotation. So zooming in on this one here towards the Boonville area, we can see CC, and right now CC's clear. Again, that because we're so far away from the radar, it doesn't mean there's not a tornado on the ground. There could be one. We just can't see it super clearly unless it starts lifting the debris up pretty significantly. Boonville, please be in your safe space. Rockford, Union Grove, Union Cross, areas north of Yadkinville on 601. And then this is going to come up towards Stony Knoll, Friendship, Rockford, Copeland, Pine Hill, Cedar Hill, and then eventually Pine Mountain area in North Carolina. So this is another cell that's moving northeast, right over the Boonville area and headed up in that general direction towards Pilot Mountain. This tornado warning here for the Dobson area expires in about 3 minutes. We'll see if they continue or change that one. Still maybe a little area rotation just north and west of Dobson. Certainly doesn't look as vigorous as it did earlier. You can see there's some strong winds in here though, as this line pushes up over the Dobson area right now and then back into the Jonesville area. Boonville, after your tornadic circulation clears, you're going to get hit with this line of storms that's back towards Jonesville and along the I-77 corridor. That's moving a little more east, and that will impact you as well. So kind of a 1-2 punch if you're in the Boonville area. Still watching this area rotation near Harmony, as well as another area rotation now along 40 between Statesville and Moxville. If you're in this warning area, this larger severe thunderstorm warning has a tornado possible tag. So it would be good to take tornado precautions, be on your low level, be away from doors and windows, certainly be in a permanent structure, and then you can hopefully get access to your tornado planned location quickly if one of these areas spin up. But this area here near Boonville is looking like the tightest rotation. This area down close a lot to 44 may have tightened up a little bit too. We'll have to give that a scan or two, and I wouldn't be shocked if we get another warning out of this area. Headed up between Coal Springs and Oakland Heights. That area here is right along 40. So right along 40 and US 64. That rotation has gotten a little tighter, but we'll give it a scan or two and see what the trend line does. The one that's kind of weak broad rotation near Harmony, Eagles Mill is still really weak and broad, so that's a good sign on that trend line. The Boonville one has stayed together over the last couple scans. So that's headed up north and east towards Stony Knoll and Rock Ford. It's over the Boonville area right now. This is in North Carolina, along 601 and 67. And it's really just over that Boonville area right now. So next in line, Rock Ford. It's headed in the general direction up towards Pine Hill, Copeland, Stony Knoll. Please be in your safe spaces here for tornadoes. That's lowest level interior room, away from doors and windows. Put as much walls between you and the outside as possible. And then certainly better if you have a basement or a tornado shelter. This area here towards Boonville is the rotation that we're watching here for this tornado warned cell. Still just radar indicated. That's a good sign. And checking CC, not seeing any CC drop here at the moment. So likely at least not a strong tornado on the ground. It doesn't mean there's nothing on the ground. We just may be too high in the radar to see it. But we'd be watching this area just north and east of Boonville. But you can see there are pretty tight rotation here with the blues and the greens. So we're watching that point right here for your tornadic potential. This is going to quickly move up into the Rockford, Crutchfield, and Stony Knoll area, and then up towards Copeland, Pine Hill, Cedar Hill, and Pilot Mountain, Long Hill, and Blackwater. And also maybe as far east as Pinnacle. High winds now approaching that area around Dobson. And then the high winds will be approaching the area around Boonville again. Checking on that rotation south of Yadkinville, still fairly broad and not as robust. You can kind of see it actually since we're pretty close comparison to the Boonville rotation. It's a lot broader. But that's one to watch compared to Boonville's is a lot tighter. Still far from the radar site though, so please be taking, if you can, take your tornado precautions for these severe thunderstorm warnings with tornado possible tag. At least be away from the windows and doors and try and put yourself in an interior room. That also has 60-mile-an-hour winds and 3/4 inch hail. Still a little rotation here around Cool Springs, Oakland Heights. That's broadened out a bit, so that's a good sign. And then there's other points of rotation in some of these cells that are further down. So what to check trend lines on those, see if they're increasing or not. They're somewhat just holding their own. A bit of rotation here near Pageland. This one may be weakened up a little bit near the 485 Mint Hill area. Those are non-warned right now, but they do have special weather statements. This area here has also had some rotation as it's come up west of Kannapolis. Still does have some rotation near 5 Points, but that I think has come down a little bit. Yeah, it was a little stronger here. See, west of Kannapolis, a little tighter rotation. That's weakened up, at least in the short term. So, good sign there. You can see this area rotation here near Oakland Heights. Still broad and weak, and it's in that severe thunderstorm warned area. So is the one near Yadkinville. And then we're getting a little far from the radar site. The Boonville one is tornado warned. We'll get a better look at that from this radar. Still broadened out a little bit, but it's decently here, right in the Rockford area, as it's come off of the Boonville area. So Rock Ford, Stony Knoll, Copeland, up towards Pine Hill. You're all in line for this, and then eventually up towards the Long Hill and Pilot Mountain area in North Carolina. So you can see here as the rotation, it actually tightened a little bit right over the Boonville area, and then it's now coming up right around Rock Ford. That cell that produced the tornado warning was originally a little more out in front of the line. It's now kind of become part of the line. And that's the same way for the storm that had the confirmed tornado earlier near Jonesville. When that line was back a little further, it wasn't quite as... it was a little bit out on its own. Now it's basically part of the line. So now we have a bit of a line of storms with embedded circulations in it. That may change the complexity of this tornado threat here in North Carolina versus the individual cells that were scattered. Like there still are kind of south and east of Charlotte, so those are areas that we're going to have to watch for those individual cells with potential spin-ups. And then we'll see how this line continues to organize here as it comes across some areas near Mount Airy, all the way down Yadkinville, and then getting into the areas between Statesville and Mocksville. It's at least a severe warned line for tornado possibles because there are points of rotation along this line. There are various points of rotation, even maybe a little bit still in that original cell from Dobson. So we just had to watch those. This is the one that's currently tornado warned, headed up from the Boonville area towards Pilot Mountain. And we can zoom on this. It's over the Rock Ford area right now. So if you're in this area around Rock Ford, Stony Knoll, headed up towards Pine Hill, that is the area that we're watching here for tornadic potential. Still just radar indicated, so good sign there. And we can check its CC here. It'd be in this area right in here. So still no big CC drop. That's a good sign here that we're not seeing any large tornado on the ground between Rock Hill and Stony Knoll. There's your area rotation right in here, moving up north-northeast. And it'd be this area here that we'd see blues and greens indicating non-meteorological targets. So good news right now is we're not seeing that. They've now extended this severe thunderstorm warning. Good news is they've dropped the tornado possible tags. They've dropped that, but severe thunderstorm warning for 60-mile-an-hour winds, 3/4 inch hail, and that gets you closer to the areas that are more populated around Winston-Salem. Walker Town, not in the warning yet, but the areas north and west of Winston-Salem, Rural Hall, Stanleyville, Louisville, Clemens, Bermuda Ridge, Yadkin College, Churchland are all in this extended severe thunderstorm warning. And that's now for this line of storms that's organized from Mount Airy down to the areas around east of Statesville. That's moving east-northeast. So eventually, if that continues to hold together and organize, that's going to produce a wind threat into the Winston-Salem, into the High Point and Greensboro areas here. And then watching some of these individual cells further down. These ones are close enough to the Charlotte radar that we can see. Still small cells, but still have some points of rotation on them. This is getting away from the radar, but a little bit of rotation headed up towards the Wadesboro area. I think we looked at that one earlier. It was towards Pageland, headed up towards Wadesboro. That's one to watch. A small cell near Fairview, but it is rotating weekly. If that can tighten up, that is another area to watch here as it comes up towards Stanfield and Red Cross. And then some gusty winds in the very least around the Concord area. And maybe still a little rotation up near the area coming towards Salisbury. But mainly want to focus in back on the tornado warned portion of these storms. So it's for this area here that's now come up past Stony Knoll and Rockford and now into the area around Level Cross, Copeland, and Pine Hill in North Carolina. So this area rotation's holding together, and it's a little tighter than those broad rotation points that we looked at a few minutes ago. This is in general coming up towards the area along 268 here, towards Pine Hill, Cedar Hill, Level Cross, Copeland are next in line for that tornadic threat. Eventually continuing up 268 towards the Pilot Mountain area. This is another area of rotation that's been holding together for a decent period. Still not seeing anything on the CC, so that's a good sign. At least indicates that there's not a super strong tornado lofting debris thousands of feet into the air. It doesn't mean there's not something on the ground, we just can't see it at the altitude that the radar is looking at. You can see there the storms and rain are finally moving into that camera in Sutton, West Virginia, as we were watching severe thunderstorms with rotation up there a while back. Those in West Virginia have backed off significantly in the last hour or so. So we've had this tornado watch in place in the extreme southwestern Pennsylvania and then most of West Virginia, and also the very southern and eastern portions of Ohio around Athens. So far, really, the instability has stayed well below the Ohio River. It hasn't recovered from morning rounds of rain and storms. Still have some storms that are coming into this tornado watch area, but they look like they're holding sub-severe. And then some new storms around West Union and Hillsborough in Ohio, and they also look to be under severe levels. We'll just have to see the next little bit if any of those can tap any instability, but there's still a ton of rain and storms between Charleston in West Virginia, Parkersburg, and then all the way up into the Wheeling and Pittsburgh area. So that should hold any recovery to the atmosphere down. Yeah, we were really looking for a conditional tornado threat in North Carolina, and that has developed. Those storms kind of broke through some caps and were able to at least be discreet here for a little bit as they were organizing and maturing. We'll continue to follow them here as they're developing into a bit of a line. Some broad rotation with this cell near Hillsville in this is in Virginia. We'll just have to watch that one. That one's a little bit out on its own. And then further down we have that line that's developed here from Mount Airy all the way down with the tornado warning still for the Pine Hill area, headed up towards Pilot Mountain. Still just radar indicated. And then severe storms, tornado possible tag in the areas near Yadkinville, headed eventually towards Louisville, Winston-Salem, Clemens, Mocksville, getting some high winds right now. This area also has a tornado possible tag down towards areas between Moxville and Statesville. And then this area is generally lifting up towards the Bermuda Run area. A bit of broad rotation still up in that area just north of Moxville. Looking at, there was an area of rotation near Yadkinville. That's weakened. It was a little stronger, and now it's come across Yadkinville and significantly weakened. So good sign there. That area still does have a severe thunderstorm tornado possible tag. So be taking shelter at least away from doors and windows in permanent structure. If you can, be away from a temporary structure like a mobile home or a metal, prefab shed or garage situation that some people like to work in or may have like car repairs in. Time to go into the house if you're out in one of those situations. Area near Pine Hill still showing rotation. It's weaker than it was earlier as it came across the area by Boonville and Rock Ford and now up into that Pine Hill area. Next in line for that is Cedar Hill, Ararat, Long Hill, and Pilot Mountain coming up in North Carolina here along North Carolina 268 and then eventually into the US 52 corridor between Long Hill and the areas around Pilot Mountain. We'll check CC again, and still not seeing any significant CC drops in this area here near Pine Hill, so a good sign that it's still a storm that's capable of producing a tornado, but we're not seeing a significant debris ball indicating a significant tornadoes on the ground. Important to hydrate. Alright, so Cedar Hill, coming up towards Cedar Hill on 268. Area rotation right here between Pine Hill and Cedar Hill. And that's going to continue to generally ride along 268 towards the Pilot Mountain area as it moves north-northeast here in North Carolina. Now have a new severe thunderstorm warning for tornado possible. Likely the rotation point is down here between Concord and Mount Pleasant. This is getting real far from the radar. Oh, here, we can see it from the Charlotte radar. Oh yeah, we looked at this storm earlier. It has some high winds in here. And we're decently close to the Charlotte airport radar, so these are definitely on the lower level in the atmosphere, so they may be reaching the ground, but we're seeing 50-60 mile an hour winds pretty easy here as this area comes north and east from Concord up towards Rimmer Watts Crossroads. 62 mile an hour winds, and this is an area just around the Mount Mitchell area over towards Watts Crossroads. You're going to be under the gun for some pretty heavy winds, and then the area around Mount Pleasant, also some gusty winds. That area, it looks to be maybe the area of it's really broad rotation, but you have some winds kind of going like this along a bit of a shear line. Nice thing is we're seeing some grays in between the greens and reds, so it's not super tight right now, which is why this only has a tornado possible tag. But we'll have to watch that as that area comes across the areas from Mount Pleasant up towards Watts Crossroads. We'll have to watch and see if that intensifies. This is one of those cells that are out ahead of the line that's been developing back to the north and west. So still a bit of a discrete cell here as it comes up from Mount Pleasant towards Rockwell, Meisenheimer, Faith, and areas around Salisbury and Spencer may get into that cell as well. Also strong wind coming up from the Concord area towards the Rockwell area here in North Carolina. So far, these cells have stayed away from the immediate Charlotte area. So this is north and east of the Charlotte area, but it's out in some pretty populated areas. And then back up to the tornado warned storm. It's starting to get really ingested into this line, so we'll have to see how tornado potentials continue as we go into the evening here. You can see it definitely is more lining out versus the discrete areas of rotation that we saw earlier. So even just a couple scans ago, that rotation was around Cedar Hill. It was definitely tighter as it came across the Rockford area, moved up towards Pine Hill, now between Pine Hill, Cedar Hill, and it's really started to line out here. Any rotation is left would be in this area between Cedar Hill and Pine Mountain, but it's a lot weaker and broader than it was, and you can see it's more of a line coming across. Oops, the drawing tool going nuts there. But if it tightens back up, it'd be an area that continues to go north and east across the Pilot Mountain area. I think I keep saying Pine Mountain, but that's Pilot Mountain. New severe thunderstorm watch or warning for 3/4 inch hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds, and this is into Virginia here. I believe these are our first warnings of the day for Virginia, but a line of heavy thunderstorms now arcing north and east along the 58 corridor here in southwestern Virginia. Pretty heavy rain and storms in that. That's going to be affecting areas from Hillsville, Dougspur, Willis, Indian Valley, Laurel Branch up towards Floyd, areas around Union, areas around Meadows of Dan, Laurel Fork, Claudville, Stewart, all in Virginia. You have this storm coming up towards you, and it's at, let's get a timing of it, moving northeast at 35 miles an hour. So that's going to be coming across all this area along US 58, and yeah, that's a rough night. I think we had another severe thunderstorm warning extended now. And that's for this area south and west of Winston-Salem. See if we can get a good look at it. A bit of a radar hole here. Oof. Not getting a great look at those storms. Between Statesville and Salisbury. This is coming up with 3/4 inch hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds. That's in the areas around Moxville, around Yadkin, Churchland, headed towards the Linwood area, as well as Spencer and Salisbury. And then Spencer and Salisbury down towards Mount Pleasant has this other warned storm for this cell that's coming north and east, northeast, along the 85 corridor. Winston-Salem has a severe thunderstorm warning, 4 tornado possible, for 3/4 inch hail and 60-mile-an-hour winds. Those storms are west of Winston-Salem right now, around Louisville, around Bermuda Run and Clemens, and then arcing down towards Churchland. I'll have to watch. There's still a little broad rotation right in here around Bermuda Run. That was an area of rotation that I think was around the Moxville area earlier. It still looks really broad and weak, but we're pretty far up in the radar, which is probably why there is a tornado possible tag on this severe thunderstorm warning. So we'll have to watch that tightens up around Clemens and Louisville area. This is coming into the more populated areas around Winston-Salem, Louisville, Bethania, Stanleyville, Pfaffstown, with heavy rain, thunder, lightning, tornado possible. Still some broad rotation up by Pilot Mountain, but that tornado warning has been allowed to expire. I don't believe we have any tornado warnings at the moment, so we'll switch it over. I do have some severe thunderstorm warnings still. And just check our handy dandy sheet here just to make sure there's no warnings anywhere else. Checking back into this area around Concord, you can use the Charlotte International Radar. Not much longer though, it's going to be leaving that area. Still showing a pretty good amount of strong winds up in here headed towards Rockwell and Faith. This area of strong winds is moving north-northeast, probably 50-60 mile an hour winds. We saw a few scans ago when it was even closer to the radar site. Around the Concord area, it was showing 60 plus mile an hour winds, and that's not that far off the deck. So these may likely continue. We're getting a little further from that Charlotte International Radar site. Good news is that rotation point down by Mount Pleasant hasn't picked up a ton. It's still kind of down in there, but it's broad and weak, so that's why this only has a tornado possible tag on it. Otherwise, close to 1-inch hail is possible as well, though it's not looking as vigorous in the hail core as it did a couple scans back. But still a nasty storm coming up towards Rockwell and Faith. Still affecting the areas around Mount Pleasant, down towards Red Cross. Some other non-severe storms with a new special weather statement for up to 50 mile an hour winds. So consider being inside sturdy structures down in this area north of Wadesboro. There was some broad rotation in the Wadesboro area earlier. It's still maybe in there, but it's not, it hasn't intensified, so that's a good thing for that point of rotation. Another little cell here by Rosalie's Crossroads. This is in South Carolina now. We'll have to watch that one as it matures near the Darlington area. Yeah, we're really far from that radar site here. Ooh. This area around Charlotte has a radar hole. It is a bit frustrating, especially to get the radar down towards the ground level to get some confirmations of these storms. But right now, these storms have lined out a bit. So we have a pretty strong line of severe thunderstorms all the way down from southern Virginia, approaching the Winston-Salem area, between Winston-Salem and Louisville, down towards Clemens, down approaching Lexington in North Carolina, and in the Churchland area. And you can see here it's kind of bowing out a little bit as it approaches Winston-Salem. So Winston-Salem, you're going to get some pretty heavy winds in here, coming in closer. The areas between Louisville, River Ridge Run, and Winston-Salem now are going to start getting those gusty winds. Up towards Pilot Mountain, you're in it right now. Mount Airy starting to get on the back edge of this line. And then next in line up in Virginia is the areas around Stewart, Meadows of Dan, Hillsville now starting to get onto the backside of these storms. But areas north and east of that towards Willis, Union, Dougspur, eventually over towards Haycock, Woolwine, Laurel Branch, and Floyd. Those are all in southwest Virginia. And then north of that, still just general thunderstorms and mess along the I-81 corridor near Radford and Christiansburg. And then up into Virginia, the line continues, but non-severe near Lewisburg, West Virginia, near Alderson, West Virginia. Some hefty non-severe thunderstorms up here. And then the big issue up in Virginia right now is the flood threat that extends from the Pittsburgh area with a flash flood emergency all the way really along and east of the Ohio River, all parts of the western half of West Virginia really. Charleston area is in flash flood warnings all the way down towards Bruno and the Tennessee border here. And then all the way up 79 towards Morgantown, Clarksburg, Fairmount, Wheeling, and then the immediate area around Pittsburgh, all under flash flood warnings. Up towards Zelienople and Butler. And then close to downtown here, just west of downtown Pittsburgh. This is out kind of towards the airport, I believe. Moon Township and McDonald and Cecile are under a flash flood emergency. They've had about 5 inches of rain and are expected to get at least 1 to 3 more inches of rain. So, new tornado warning. The radar indicated this is an area of rotation that we were following earlier. It looks like it's tightened up a little more, and it's that area of rotation that's now east of Pilot Mountain. So we're now east of the 52 corridor and headed towards, it's over the area around Brims Grove. Let's get a located near Francisco, moving northeast at 45. And impacted locations are Danbury, Francisco, Sandy Ridge, Prestonville, and whatever that is. Let's get some other town names. Snow Hill, Prestonville, Shelton Store, Lackey Store, Dan River Shores. It's going to be this area here, just east of Brims Grove, along 66. This seems to be a less populated area, so that's one good thing. But if you live up here along 89 and 66, near Dan River Shores, Moores Springs, and then just north of the Danbury area, Hartman, Prestonville, Snow Hill, Lawsonville, Hart Store, Francisco. This area rotation is coming up towards you. It's along this line here, tightened up a little bit, at least enough to give a tornado warning right in this area here between Brims Grove along 66. This is moving a little faster than some of the cells have earlier today, so it also has a little bit of a bow feature. Meanwhile, down here towards Winston-Salem, that's another area that has a bow feature, so you're going to get the strong winds now coming in towards downtown Winston-Salem. Severe thunderstorm warnings still down here with tornado possible. More severe thunderstorm warnings now coming out with tornado possible. I think this is that area around Wadesboro that we were looking at earlier. I feel like this area hasn't moved as fast as some of them have either. This area seems to be going a little slower. So it could also be some flood threat down in this area along 52 between Wadesboro and Norwood and Annisonville. That area has been warned all the way out towards Pinehurst and Whispering Springs and up into the Troy area. That area seems to be organizing a little more, so they're expecting some higher winds out of that, as well as a tornado possible. Still that rotation, I think, down in here by Wadesboro. We'll get a better look at those storms once they come across the radar site. New tornado possible, severe thunderstorm warning for Winston-Salem, the immediate downtown now. Winston-Salem, Walkertown, Kernersville, all the way close to the area just west of High Point is now under this severe thunderstorm warning. And then down towards Thomasville, Lexington, more severe thunderstorm warnings down towards Denton for these storms that are coming up near the Rockwell area. Also warned for 60-mile-an-hour winds. Particularly a strong-looking cell here just west of Lexington near Churchland. That's going to be headed up into the Lexington area in North Carolina. And then we still have our tornado warning, our newest tornado warning, expiring in 25 minutes for this area between Pilot Mountain, Danbury, Brims Grove, and Francisco. It's not looking as good as it was for rotation just a scan or two ago. We can see here, we were watching it, it was tornado warned. It kind of lined out a little bit between Cedar Hill and Pilot Mountain. But then it looks like as it got over Pilot Mountain, it intensified the rotation a little bit. And then certainly over here at Brims Grove, we can start to see it again. Repeat statement of the night is we're far away from the radar sites here, so we're seeing upper level, mid-level rotation. It's hard in this area of the country to see ground level rotation, being so far from the radar site. But that area is up in here between North Carolina 89 and North Carolina 268. That'll be coming up in general towards the 89 corridor and eventually towards North Carolina 8. Those routes here. This is more rural, but yeah, still there's some towns up in here towards Lawsonville and Snow Hill. Those look to be the next named communities on this radar map, but that is coming up towards Lawsonville and Snow Hill. Along 89 now here, north of Dan River Shores. If you're in these areas here, Dan River Shores up towards Lawsonville, please be in your safe place here for this tornado warned storm. Also coming as far east as Prestonville, Snow Hill, Colville just on the edge of the warning there, and Danbury just on the edge of the warning. Maybe another little circulation down in this area. We can watch that as well. And then strong thunderstorm coming into Winston-Salem right now. It has a tornado possible tag, I think, for that little area rotation around Stanleyville and 52. If that tightens up, it'd be coming towards the Walkertown area. Beyond that, pretty much a bowing segment of winds here from Rural Hill, Stanleyville, and that's going to come into the Winston-Salem area with the strong, heavy winds and possible hail. What are they warning us for hail? Only 3/4 inch. Hail has not been the biggest threat here so far. So it's been the quick spin-up tornadoes and high winds have been the primary threat. Still trying to get a better look of these Wadeboro area storms. They're decently far from the radar site, but they're severe warned with tornado possible tag as well. This storm here near Albemarle, 60-mile-an-hour winds as it lifts up between Red Cross, Albemarle, and Meisenheimer, also the New London area. And then a pretty punchy storm, severe warned, and tornado possible with some broad rotation now lifting past Rockwell. This is generally headed up towards Linwood and Silver Valley. And also the Denton area. You're going to get into these couple cells here as they lift north and east along the 49 corridor. That's looks like North Carolina 49. If you're in the Charlotte area, Mount Holly, that area has stayed quiet so far. So that's been a good, that's been good for you. Let me take a second here. And I want to change changed the title, just kind of updating it since we're pretty much centered in North Carolina. Let's don't need the DOT tag right now. North Carolina doesn't have a lot of live DOT cams, so this is looking a little interesting here, and we're far from the radar site. So watch this area as it lifts up towards the Albemarle, New London area. It's starting to present a bit of a hook. I don't see a ton of rotation on it, but it'll be something that we can watch. It definitely has a little bit of that look to it. Otherwise, heavy storms all the way from the South Carolina state line now, all the way across the whole state of North Carolina, up north of Winston-Salem and into the Stewart, Virginia area. Still a little bit of broad rotation right in here by Five Forks. And then the tornado warning back in the Danbury area has been canceled. So that's good to see. Yeah, we saw a little better presentation earlier towards Pilot Mountain. Whew, what a cluster of storms that developed here. We were watching them earlier this afternoon. They were capped for a little bit, and then they finally got going as they came out from the Appalachians into the Piedmont. High winds in this area here along the area around Winston-Salem. A little bit of rotation. Still watching between Stanleyville and Walkertown as it lifts up north and east. It looks like the areas right around Winston-Salem don't look as organized as they did a few minutes ago, so that's nice to see that Winston-Salem may be getting a little spared. As yeah, that strongest part you can see here with the reds and brighter oranges has lifted north of Winston-Salem as it came across there, kind of following I-40 and then now north of the downtown immediately of Winston-Salem. Still some strong storms though lifting north from Bermuda Run, north-northeast, Bermuda Run, Clemens, Yadkin College. Those areas are headed up generally towards the Winston-Salem area, so still some severe thunderstorm potentials up in there. And then if you're back in areas that had quite a few tornado warnings earlier this evening, Statesville, Hickory, Wilkesboro, you guys have cleared out. The I-77 corridor in North Carolina has cleared out down to Charlotte. Charlotte still hasn't had, I don't think, any severe weather, as most of the storms developed just on in the periphery of the Charlotte metro area. Still a major flood threat in the Appalachians and the Ohio River Valley. Good news is they dropped the tornado watch. Don't think we had any tornado watches or tornado warnings in this whole watch area in West Virginia and Ohio and Pennsylvania. Still a little bit of a watch in northern West Virginia around the Morgantown area and south of Pittsburgh. Just watching a few of these stronger cells here, I assume those are the ones that have the most access to some instability, as they've been riding along this edge of heavy rain. So if they can tap a little bit of that, they have a somewhat conducive environment to get some fuel here without getting a ton of rain-cooled air. But they're not doing that much. This whole area has underperformed with the tornadic parameters. It just has a lot less of the instability. It had a ton of rain and clouds really all day and hasn't really recovered from that instability or the lack of instability. But still, heavy rain, flood threat. If you don't have to travel in this area in western Pennsylvania down through Charleston in West Virginia, it's a messy night. It is a really messy night. Something a little weird is going on here towards Summersville. That may just be a bit of a low pressure system that's developed. It's kind of a calm ahead. There's something kind of surging out. There's some wind surging out there. And a little bit of broad rotation as that little line and storm come across. So something to watch, but some heavy wind up in there. Even if there's not as there was maybe a scan or two back where it could have tightened up, but that surge of wind now has punched out, and any rotation that there was is now a lot broader. But for a scan or two, like right in here, that looked a little interesting, but you can see that wind surge punch out towards the Mount Lookout area. Those are some decently high winds, non-severe, but those could be 40-50 gusting mile-an-hour winds. Otherwise, you can see this long cluster of severe thunderstorm warnings. This is the first time I think in a little while we haven't had a tornado warning, but still some embedded areas of rotation. There's tornado possible tags on a lot of these severe thunderstorm warnings. So there's a bit of rotation still back in here by Danbury. Another bit of rotation just south of Stewart to keep watching. And this area here actually looks a little more vigorous than the Danbury one. But southeast of Stewart towards Gilbert Mill, Nettle Ridge, Reynolds Mill, that area has some broad rotation to watch. Not seeing much north of that, but some strong winds certainly in the Stewart area. And coming across areas near Woolwine and Floyd. Those will continue moving east towards Martinsville in Virginia. And then some extended severe thunderstorm warnings around Danbury. Again, a little rotation in there, but it's broadened up a bit. And then a bit of an arcing bow here between Danbury and Winston-Salem. That's going to continue coming across this area north and east of Winston-Salem, likely up towards Madison and Summerfield in North Carolina still. So those areas are going to continue watching. Some strong storms still now coming into the Winston-Salem area between Winston-Salem and Bermuda Run on I-40. That does not look fun right now. And then still some strong storms here coming up towards Arcadia along 285. That's going to affect the areas on the south side of Winston-Salem. Lexington now getting into the heavy thunderstorm that's come up from the Concord area with 60-mile-an-hour winds and 3/4-inch hail. And then this area around Denton also has some severe thunderstorms coming up in the areas around New London and Richfield, headed up towards Denton, Handy, and Farmer. And again, that severe thunderstorm warning for the Lexington area, down towards Linwood and areas along Route 8 around Oakwood Acres and Southmont. That area is also generally lifting up towards Silver Valley. It'll likely affect then Thomasville, probably coming up into the High Point area if it continues its northeastern path, and then likely up in towards the Greensboro area for those severe storms. These storms are still a little less structured in here. There's a cluster of severe warned storms now lifting north and east of Wadesboro. Let me check the moving northeast at 40. Those have had tornado possible tags. They've had some points of rotation. I don't see as clear of rotation as they had earlier as they were developing south and west of Wadesboro. So some good news there. And then another cell down here in South Carolina not severe warned, but a strong little cell here developing over Society Hill. We can see the Columbia radar might have a better look at that one. That one does have some high level rotation around the Society Hill area as it lifts up towards Bennettsville in South Carolina. So that's one to watch. It seems like a lot of the storms today have fired off as small cells with some higher level rotation. And then we've seen as they grow and organize, that rotation's been able to get a little bit closer to the ground for tornado warned storms and certainly developed into some severe wind storms. That's well north of Florence in South Carolina. But that one is one to watch as it heads up towards Bennettsville on US Route 15. Yeah, it's moving kind of north and the northeast too. They're all pretty much moving the same general north-northeast direction, except the line now that's back towards Winston-Salem is moving a little more east than northeast. This line now is headed from the Stewart area towards Martinsville, and then from the Danbury area in North Carolina towards Madison, North Carolina. Winston-Salem still in a mess here between Louisville, Clemens, Winston-Salem, Kernersville over towards High Point. And then that strong storm moving up through Lexington. So a bit of a lull in the tornadic activity, but that's a good thing. Still some strong storms in western Virginia and West Virginia, up towards the Lewisburg, West Virginia area. Those heavier thunderstorms will be eventually into the Roanoke area, Blacksburg, Radford. And then still checking back in the Charleston area. Still some interesting winds in this area near Summersville in West Virginia. But for the most part, that area has surged out. Yeah, it's cut off pretty much any of the rotation in there, but it's also changed direction a little bit. Those stronger storms were going a little more east-northeast. They're now moving more north. So those strong winds in here will affect Summersville, possibly up towards Sutton in West Virginia. And then we have a new warning. Let's just get us back here. Okay, this is just going to be an extension of the line being warned for now in Virginia here. This new warning is for this line just now east of Stewart, headed north and east towards Rocky Mount. And now Martinsville and Rocky Mount are in the severe thunderstorm warning, as well as Copper Hill, all in Virginia. So if you live anywhere between Stewart and those towns in Virginia, again, a bit more of a rural area, but still there's a lot of people that live out here. So places like Henry, Pizarro, Floyd, up towards Callaway, Copper Hill, and then down US 220 between Rocky Mount and Martinsville. And then certainly in the Martinsville area, Rock Run, Stanleytown, Martinsville, Laurel Park, Jones Creek, Figsboro. Those all now have severe thunderstorm warnings. That's for 60-mile-an-hour winds and 3/4-inch hail. Those gusty winds right now are between Stewart and Spencer around the Critz area. And then further south, that line continues around Danbury, and then approaching Madison and Stoneville eventually. and arcing down towards the Winston-Salem area, Stokesdale, Walkertown, and immediately around the Winston-Salem area. Down 285, Midway, Ebenezer's, approaching Wahlberg. And then finally another cell starting to approach High Point down towards Thomasville and Lexington right now. Severe warned. Still a hefty cell here back towards Churchland. See if we can get a better look at these on this radar. Severe warned cell seems to be a little less organized than it was earlier between New London and Denton. And then there's that one around Thomasville and Lexington. And then cells lifting up around the Troy, North Carolina area. Between Troy and Norwood and Rockingham. And then along the 73-74 corridor. Harrisonville, Pekin, Chip, Candor, Biscoe, and Troy, all in that area of severe weather. That's going to continue moving north and east towards Carthage, Seven Lakes, Whispering Pines, Aberdeen, and still a strong unwarned cell down here by Society Hill and Bennettsville in South Carolina. We'll see what that looks like as it continues to lift towards the North Carolina state line, if it can tap some of the energy that these cells have had. Some of the strongest parts of this line are headed towards Martinsburg right now, and then headed towards Madison in North Carolina, as well as these cells that are now south of Winston-Salem, some of them just south of Winston-Salem, headed in the general area of High Point, Kernersville, and then likely eventually Greensboro. And do see some reflectivity picking up in this area around Troy. So that area has definitely picked up in intensity as well. Tornado watch goes out for till 11. Let me double check this. Yeah, till 11 p.m. Eastern in central North Carolina right now. If you're following the watch that was back in Ohio and West Virginia, has been trimmed down significantly. This watch, the remaining part of it, is just in a little corner of West Virginia towards Morgantown. That expires in the next hour. So that's good news here. And so far, no warnings in this watch. Even very few, actually, even severe thunderstorm warnings today in this watch. There's a few cells still worth watching up in the area south and east of Pittsburgh, essentially between Pittsburgh and Morgantown. But still non-severe at the moment, and they've stayed non-severe, so that's been a good trend over there. Back here, a couple points of rotation here. This one we've been following for a little while near Stewart, and it's still up in there. It's still kind of weak, but it's in the areas between Critz and Stone Store or Dillon's Fork. But that area is worth watching up in here. That's along 627 in Virginia. We can also just double check CC. Not seeing anything that's located with that little area rotation. That would be up in this area here. So severe thunderstorms can produce quick spin-ups, especially with these storms that have had a history of doing that. That's why quite a few of this line has a tornado possible tag on it. Still watching a few areas of rotation now north and west of Madison, and basically between Danbury and Madison. That area is looking a little less vigorous in rotation, though. Some high winds coming towards the Madison area. And then Winston-Salem still in some strong thunderstorms, with some of the strongest on the southeast side of Winston-Salem along 285 near Wahlberg, Midway, Ebenezer's, now coming into the High Point area. And that little cell is coming up from the Lexington area along 85 here near Thomasville, has a little rotation on it. It had a tornado possible tag, looks like it still does, as it came across the Lexington area. Any rotation right now still in it would be in that Thomasville area, lifting towards High Point, so that's one to watch. We can check its trends. It's kind of been holding steady as weak broad rotation. So still one to watch as it comes across Thomasville. And then some of these storms that are now south and east, or south and west of the Raleigh-Durham area, we can get a good look on the Raleigh radar. The area around Denton is looking less than it was a few minutes ago. It was definitely stronger as it was down towards Albemarle and Richfield. It still has a severe thunderstorm warning, but it's been on a little bit of a downtrend here. So good news if you're in the areas around Farmer and then up towards Ashboro. That storm is weakening. So some good news there. Still strong storms, severe warned between Troy, Candor, Norman, and Mount Gilead, or Gilead. That's now approaching 73, 74 in the Briscoe, Star, and Candor area. Probably the strongest is south of Troy. And we can zoom in a little bit in this area around Onville, Harrisville, and now approaching the Candor area. So that's your strongest part of that storm. Still some decent cells down along the North Carolina and South Carolina state line. The cells that are lifting up now in that Candor area do have a damage report of multiple trees down. That's in the Annisonville area. So that's an area of storms that's being warned for 60-mile-an-hour winds. So you could still see that here, and we've had some confirmation of strong winds in Annisonville. And those storms are lifting up north and east between Troy and Seven Lakes. They'll continue lifting northeast over the evening as well. If they hold together, they could be into the Raleigh-Durham area. Those ones are generally headed that way. Still, you can see on the Raleigh radar this broad rotation north of Thomasville, kind of between Thomasville and High Point. It's still pretty broad, so it's not being warned for a tornado at the moment, but it does have a severe thunderstorm tornado possible tag. And then those heavy winds coming into Madison now, approaching Martinsville. And the areas north and west of Martinsville towards Henry, towards Philpott, Callaway, and Rocky Mount. The tornado watch has now been trimmed from the Charlotte metro area. Kannapolis, Concord, Charlotte, Gastonia, Dallas, Shelby, Boiling Springs, up all along 77 have now been trimmed from the tornado watch towards Statesville and points north. So essentially, once this line clears you, you should be clear of the severe and tornadic threat. Right now, that is affecting areas south of Roanoke and in the areas along 73 and 74 in the Winston-Salem area. So give this a little bit of time, let it clear out, and then you guys can go on and have a nice safe rest of your evening as the tornado threat winds down significantly, and now that this line has developed. Still some areas of interest in here. In this area around Spencer and Amistown, a little bit of rotation in there. A little bit now west of Martinsville towards Philpott. Still broad and weak. Still watching this area here between High Point and Wahlberg for some weak broad rotation right in this area. It's kind of stayed on that level, so it hasn't intensified, but something to watch. And then this is a pretty strong segment of wind and small hail possibly coming up through Thomasville towards High Point and Jamestown here in the next few minutes. So is this area here by Kernersville, now on the east side of Winston-Salem. And then still a strong storm back here by Eureka Mill, Arcadia, and Arnold with some gusty winds. Storms down by Denton are definitely on the downtrend. And the storms here near Troy, Candor, Briscoe, Rubaiyat, and Norman, those ones are still holding pretty steady, and those ones have had a history of some wind damage with multiple trees reported down in the Annisonville area. A couple reports around Annisonville. So that's good to note as these storms come up along the 73 corridor here, that they have had that history of some wind damage. They're going to continue moving north and east towards Seven Lakes, Whispering Pines, not in a severe... Okay, had a little bit of a glitch there, but I think we're back streaming okay. Still watching this cell here by Bennettsville in South Carolina. It's had a bit of high-level rotation near Society Hill and now approaching Bennettsville. It's non-severe warn, but at least it's far away from the radar, so we're seeing a little bit of more of an upper-level look at it, but it's a punchy little storm as it comes across towards Bennettsville. We'll see what it can do. It gets a little closer into this more tornadic favorable environment that's in the watch area. And we now have a new severe thunderstorm watch with that tornado possible. That's the one that's had, I think, might interest the most of the last few minutes. For that area around High Point. And a little bit of rotation right in here by High Point, headed generally north of the immediate downtown High Point, but headed up between High Point and Kernersville, also kind of in the general direction of Greensboro. Now this area is under a severe thunderstorm warning, so that's everything from Summerfield, Greensboro, and the immediate Greensboro metro, down through High Point and Jamestown, over towards Pleasant Gardens and Whiteset. That also includes areas north and east of Greensboro, Brown Summit, Monticello, Osceola, Lakewood, McLeansville, Gibsonville, Hillsdale, Scalesville, and the immediate Greensboro metro area. So a pretty populated area here with the severe thunderstorm warning. That's also for 60-mile-an-hour winds and some small hail up to 3/4 of an inch. That's near High Point to near Thomasville and moving northeast at 45. So I think we're good again. Let me just double check audio and just make sure we're rolling again. Yeah, we're good. Had a bit of a internet issue there for just a second where it glitched out. But this area here, Greensboro down to High Point, you're in the severe thunderstorm warning, as well as areas down towards Denton. And there's kind of two areas that are, these storms that are in between towards the Denton area are definitely on the downtrend. So it's these two areas, particularly in the High Point, Greensboro, Winston-Salem area, and then these warnings down here towards Troy and Seven Lakes. Two kind of distinct clusters of storms that we're really paying some extra attention to as they move north and east across central North Carolina right now. Tornado watch, the larger tornado watch, is in effect until 11 Eastern at the moment. That is from the state line south of Wadesboro all the way up through the Winston-Salem area, just west of Raleigh-Durham, and then into southwest Virginia up into the Roanoke and Lynchburg areas. So far we haven't had any tornado warnings in Virginia, but there are some strong cells south of Roanoke towards Rocky Mount that are worth watching. There's at times been little circulations in here. None has tightened up to the level that would necessitate a tornado warning. But at the very least, they can lead to some extra gusty winds. There's one actually approaching Martinsburg or Martinsville right now near 220. That one's worth watching. And then another one a little further north. This one here towards Oak Level and Reed Creek Village is also worth watching here. In line segments like this, you always have to watch these notching situations. So something in here along 220 between Stanleytown and Oak Level is definitely worth watching. If that tightens up and gets a little more vigorous, that is an area of interest. Otherwise, some small hail, gusty winds, maybe another little circulation up north of Oak Level. And then a little circulation, I think, south there towards Spencer as well. Another one kind of tucked back in here by Stoneville. So definitely some vigorous thunderstorms. And that's why there's warnings there. Severe thunderstorm tornado possible warning in that area around Madison. That circulation now looks like it's pushing up near Stoneville with that tornado possible. And then back down here towards High Point, these severe thunderstorms approaching Greensboro now in the Winston-Salem area. We can start to get a better look at these storms from the Raleigh-Durham radar. But yeah, there's still a couple areas of interest right around Oak Hollow Lake. That's where your area rotation is. It's broadened out a bit, so that's a good news. It's coming into a populated area. These are still severe warned storms, so this is going to affect a populated area. We also have a new severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible for these storms that are lifting up now between Troy and Seven Lakes, now along the 73-74 corridor. So Robbins, Seagrove, now in the warning are Ramseur, Siller City, Ashboro, Pittsboro, Sanford, and approaching then into the Raleigh-Durham metro area. Not in a warning yet, but these storms are generally, and we said it a few minutes ago, these storms are in general headed towards the Raleigh-Durham area with a history of some strong winds with multiple trees reported down near Annisonville. Oh, had to sneeze there for a second. Okay. So regrouping, we have had a line of thunderstorms, severe warned storms develop. Back along the I-77 corridor, they had various tornado warnings. Right now, no tornado warnings, so that's good news. But there are some embedded circulations, and much of this line has a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag. So the Weather Service is watching some of the same points that we are, and just none of them have rose to the level of tornado warning in the last few minutes. That does not mean that there's there could be a tornado spin up in any minute, but also we're a bit in a radar hole away from some of the radar points, especially in the Winston-Salem and areas in northwest North Carolina. Um, New severe thunderstorm warning now for the areas east of Martinsville in Virginia, towards Danville, Yanceyville in North Carolina, and Reedsville in North Carolina. You can see some of these Boeing segments are in here, so there's definitely some heavier wind in here. Small hail possible. Definitely enough to knock some trees down, possibly knock some power out, and a few areas have a little rotation in them still. The rotation points do seem to be on the downtrend, but they're still there, so they're worth watching. There was a little notch up here that I was watching, but I don't see it as much anymore. I think it's still this area here. Now by Figsboro. Still has a bit of a notch in it, but still somewhat broad. And then the areas down here, gusty winds headed towards Wentworth and Eden and Reedsville. Greensboro is now getting into the mix here with Summerfield, Oak Ridge, Kernersville, seeing some of the heaviest rain, wind, and storms down towards Jamestown and High Point. That storm that was severe warned around Denton, that severe warning has dropped. So the Weather Service is seeing what we saw, where it's been on the downtrend. But then still severe storms in central North Carolina between Seagrove, Robbins, Candor. This is a pretty punchy storm here with a history of producing downed trees in the Ansonville area. So that is a storm that definitely is worth noting if you're up in the areas towards Sanford, Pittsboro, Siller City, and Ramseur. That storm's moving up to the north and east at about 35-40 miles an hour. Gustier winds here now through Martinsville, Eden, down towards Madison, Summerfield, Kernersville, and High Point. This is quickly into the Greensboro metro area here. And good news is I don't see it as that rotation that was up in this area here north of High Point has definitely broadened out. We can take a look back. So we were watching this area of rotation north of High Point as it was moving north and east. And yeah, it's way broadened out. So that's a really good sign. If there's any rotation left, it's in this area up south of Oak Ridge and east of Kernersville. If that re-strengthens, that would be the area to watch. Otherwise, just general severe thunderstorms coming in towards Greensboro, Jamestown, Oak Ridge, Summerfield, Stokesdale, and then up into the areas around Danville and Martinsville and Rocky Mount. Union Hall is next in line up in this part of the storm. Still some notching up in here, but it's weak and hasn't tightened up. as well as a little bit of notching down here towards Ridgeway in this area here on the leading edge of the line to watch. We saw it yesterday in southern Mississippi and across the Florida Panhandle, but when the storms start to line out like this and develop into these clusters, you go from the discrete tornado threat for the individual cells into these fleeting little rotation segments on the leading edge of the line, and those get a lot harder to track because they can be there one scan or two and then they're gone the next. Good news is we've seen a downtrend in tornadic activity over the last hour or so. So that's a good sign as these storms are getting into some of the more populated areas around Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and then eventually into the Raleigh-Durham area. They've been holding their own in intensity, especially this southern mode down here between Seven Lakes and Ramseur now. Starting to clear the 73-74 corridor, so that's good. Now lifting north and east of Briscoe and Candor. These have a tornado possible tag. There's still some rotation, but it's all broad and weak and hasn't tightened up since we've monitored those storms. And then some non-severe but stronger storms coming towards Asheboro and Farmer and Sophia right now. Those storms were severe warned earlier back towards Denton and Concord. They've dropped below severe limits, so very good sign there. And then those storms right now coming into the Greensboro metro. Still maybe a little bit of rotation as this area tracked north of High Point. But it's broad and weak. It's kind of that Oak Ridge area. Storms now into Wentworth, into Eden, and now a new tornado warning. We were looking at this. This was one of those notches in the line, right by Ridgeway. So Ridgeway in Virginia. This is a new tornado warning coming up north and east towards Axton and Soapstone. This is southeast of Martinsville in Virginia with a radar indicated tornado. That's going to be coming up towards Axton, Leatherwood, Swansonville, Catmoss, Aiken Summit, Sandy River, and Sandy Level. Alright, just adjusting the tag since this is outside of North Carolina. But yeah, strong little couplet right in this area. It's not crazy strong in the velocity, but it's a fairly tight couplet. Now between Ridgeway and Irisburg, and just north of Sandy Level here. So we're watching this area right in here, and we can look at it a little further here in the correlation coefficient. See if there's anything up in here. Not seeing anything immediately indicating a tornado, but that doesn't mean there's not one that's on the ground. It just has to loft debris up high enough that we can see it. And we'll watch a couple scans here and see if we pick up anything. But this is in general coming up towards Irisburg, Axton, Soapstone, West Fork, Brosville, Stony Mill, and Hinesville and Swansonville in Virginia. A new severe thunderstorm warning has also been put out ahead of the line for the areas north and east of Rocky Mount and just south of the Roanoke area. So south and east of Roanoke, a new large severe thunderstorm warning covering Union Hall, Westlake Corner, Monetta, up to Bedford, up to Alta Vista, Gretna, and near the Chatham area. But more concerning right now, just double checking the rest of this line, we have the one tornado warning. It's radar indicated at the moment, and it's for this area now between Ridgeway and Irisburg. For the rotation right in here by Irisburg, headed north and east. Now lifting up across Irisburg. So right in here, right around the Irisburg area. Headed up towards the 58 corridor, headed up towards Axton, Soapstone, West Fork. This is a new tornado warning for a radar indicated tornado. And eventually this will head out towards, if it holds together, Soapstone, Hinesville, Whitmel, and Swansonville. But watching this area right here by Irisburg. Not seeing any CC drop that's indicating a big debris ball or anything like that. So that's good news as this comes across Irisburg. This isn't the most populated area, but there's a lot of trees and stuff, so we would be seeing something if there was a significant tornado. But Irisburg right now headed up towards Axton, Stockton. A decently tight couplet here that's held together. So there could be something here. We're just not seeing it lofted on the debris signature. We're just not seeing it lofted to the altitude that the radar is at this distance from the radar site. This is definitely one of the tighter couplets that we've had for at least a little while. Earlier in the evening, there were a couple tighter ones maybe, but this one's pretty tight. Not super vigorous, but it's in here. This is a tight little couplet here that we gotta take seriously. Near Irisburg, now headed up towards Axton, Stockton. And then also in the warning is Turkey Fork, Swanson Mill, Soapstone, Sandy River, Swansonville, Hineville, Stony Mill, West Fork, Sandy Level, Cascade, Axton. Just on the edge of the warning is Laurel Park and Leatherwood. So again, a radar indicated tornado here in southern southwest Virginia. Still not really anything showing up on the correlation coefficient on the CC. This shows meteorological targets versus non-meteorological targets. So we're not seeing the non-meteorological targets, so we're not seeing anything that's not rain and hail, essentially. Sometimes big hail even shows up in the CC as a drop, but this area is now coming up between Irisburg and Axton, also near Stockton. Please be in your tornado safe spaces here. Next in line is Soapstone. West Fork is also in the warning, as well as Laurel Park. This is probably going to go south and east of Laurel Park, but still good idea to be in your safe spot, be away from windows and exterior walls, because this is a larger severe thunderstorm complex that's had a history of producing winds. Another little notch here as it moves up is one to watch near Dixon and Progress. So we'll have to watch that as that part of the line bows out. But right now we're watching this area between Irisburg and Axton. And this area here, it's broadened a bit, so that's good news. It's definitely broadened out, and we can see that when we put the trend back in here. So here it is a few minutes ago, towards the Ridgeway area. You can see how we have the reds and greens a lot closer together. It's come up now through Irisburg, still some reds and greens together there. But now we're seeing a lot more reds and greens separated by the gray, which means it's not quite as tight as it was earlier. So maybe it's still an area of broad rotation, pushing out now around the Axton area. That area is really starting to bow out, so some strong winds are certainly, even if there's not a tornado, there's still heavy, strong winds coming through Axton, Cascade. Those are headed towards Soapstone, Callahan Hills, eventually towards the Danville and Mount Herman areas in Virginia. Just double checking further down the line. This is our only tornado warning right now. Still a little bit in here near Axton. Maybe a little bit bowing out here towards 58. But it's definitely not as tight as it was earlier. Maybe this kind of loose area here. Now shifting up, Soapstone, Sandy River would be next in line. And still not seeing any CC drop in this area here around Axton, so that's good news. Taking a look at this little notch that's up here a little further. It's not quite as vigorous as it was a couple scans ago. What I'm looking for, as well as likely what the National Weather Service is looking for, are these trends to see if any areas of rotation can last more than a scan or two before they kind of get cut off from the inflow. So this one gets significantly weaker here in its last scan or two as well. Trimmed up the warning. It's now it's still radar indicated, but now these areas around Irisburg and Ridgeway are outside of the tornado warning. So if you're in Sandy Level or Irisburg, you can come out of your tornado safe space. Still good idea to be inside an interior room, as this is a pretty strong line of thunderstorms here. Coming up through now north and east of Rocky Mount towards Union Hall. Burnt Chimney, Westlake Corners are next in line. Up here we're a little closer to the radar site, so we can see a little bit more of these high winds in here towards Union Hall. This area is pushing out. Still a little notch in here, but that's a lot weaker than it was. And then still a little bit of notching and a little bit of a couplet in here towards Soapstone and Axton. Maybe another little bit right here. Watching kind of these two areas for rotation still. You can see those are where the red and green come together decently versus over here. Still the green going this way, the red going this way, but you can see in here there's this gray batch indicating that this area of rotation is not as tight as it was. That's a little different right in here by Axton, and maybe right down here near Soapstone. So this is still a tornado warning as it comes up this way. Yeah, still seeing that right in here, and maybe right in here as well. So this area from Soapstone over towards Axton still has to be in your safe space here. That's going to be coming up towards Sandy River, Hinesville, Whitmel, Swansonville, Swanson's Mill, and Swansonville. There's a couple Swansonvilles. West Fork, just north of West Fork. A little bit of rotation in here. And then this area that we were originally watching is between Axton and Soapstone. So a couple points here of rotation. Look like they're holding together at the decent level that they are. Headed up towards Sandy River, Hinesville, eventually over towards Swansonville and Whitmel. Otherwise, the rest of the line right now still free from tornado warnings. Pretty hefty wind coming through this line of storms down here south of Siller City, and headed generally towards the Pittsboro area, and eventually we'll see if it holds together towards Cary and Raleigh. This line segment here has a history of producing some damaging winds, with multiple trees down reported back in the Annisonville area. So that's come across the areas around Troy, and now in the area between Sanford and Ramseur. Pretty heavy windstorm there. Severe storms coming into Greensboro right now. They don't look as vigorous as they did a little bit ago, but that area is still under a severe thunderstorm warning. A little heftier storms up towards Reedsville, Eden, approaching Danville and Mount Herman, and then further up the line, yeah, we can definitely see the Greensboro storms have backed off in their intensity, as they've lifted north and east across the Greensboro area. How much longer? That severe thunderstorm warning expires in 5 minutes, so we'll see what they do about that. There are not warnings, but there are some damage reports coming in from behind this line now. So trees down, power lines down. This area certainly has a history of producing damaging winds. Let's see, what else? Multiple trees down and wires down around Lexington. Trees down near Denton. Earlier, those storms had quite a history. A bunch of reports here around trees down and power lines down. Even a transformer blown, resulting in a brush fire around Rowan. Trees down here in the Rowan area. Just east of Salisbury, between Salisbury and Lexington, and then the Thomasville area. The intensity of those storms has decreased as they've now come across Greensboro, so that's good news. Still, this area up towards Reedsville and Eden, seeing significant weather, and then this Boeing segment here towards Danville. They're going to continue a tornado warning. So this tornado warning now includes Collins, Swanson's Mill, Turkey Fork, Wheel, Chatham, Red Eye, Gretna, Pickerel, and Ridgeway are now in the warning. It's now oriented a little bit more north-northeast, as this area of rotation has come around, and still seeing now north and east of Soapstone. Still a couple points here along this arcing segment where there's still some circulation potential, and those are both lifting up towards the areas around Chatham and Swanson's Mill. Right now in the Sandy River, Swansonville, and Whitmel areas. A couple points here, and we can check this again. So we're looking in this area here around Sandy River, and then this area down in here along 750. And I think we're just getting some contamination. I don't see any single points here. Right over the Sandy River area now, and then over the Hinesville area now, as this kind of arc of rotation points moves northeast. So coming into the Swansonville, Sandy River, Hinesville area right now, up towards Holly's Mill, Bannister, Swanson's Mill, Turkey Fork, Collins, Rondo, Flint Hill, Wheel, and then eventually up into the Chatham area. Okay, should still be going. Alright, had a little bit of an internet connection issue there. Alright, next in line here, Swansonville, Swansonville and Hinesville up through the Sandy River area. This is a little bit concerning right in here by Hinesville. We'll have to see if that continues for another scan or two. But a bit of a CC drop right in here by Hinesville, and it's pretty co-located with this area of rotation. You can see the greens going this way and reds going this way, and they're connecting right in this area here. So we'll check that on a scan or two. There's a couple areas of rotation now in this circulating area here as it punches up north and east towards Chatham, Red Eye, Gretna, Pickerel, Swanson's Mill. Looks like we're going again, so connection looks good. Sorry if there was any drop in connection there. Now in this area by 41, there could be something in here. There's a little bit of CC drop that's now come across this way. We saw it in that last scan or two by Hinesville. There's still slight CC lowering right in here near Swansonville, and still a little bit of rotation still picking up in here. So that could be something. It could just be some CC contamination. But if you're out ahead of this, please take this warning with seriousness. There's some other areas of circulation along this line that have had some notching and rotation points. They don't look quite as vigorous right now, but watch out for these little areas too. If they can cause some quick spin-ups on the leading edge of the surging gust. The one part of the rotation looks a little broader than it did. Still that area around Swansonville looks decently tight. And luckily I'm not seeing that CC drop off on the last scan here. And not seeing any CC drop in the area between Swansonville or Sandy River either. However, good to stay in your safe space. We're decently distanced from the radar. So kind of watching these 2 points as they come up towards Bannister and Flint Hill, and then Swansonsville over towards Hawley's Mill, and eventually towards the Collins and Rondo area. This whole line segment here has a potential for strong winds in addition to the tornado warning. So beyond the tornado warning at the Mount Herman area, potential for 60-mile-an-hour winds also towards Danville. New severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible in the Greensboro metro area. That's just going to be an extension of that part of the storm. We can take a look at it. It's weaker than it did, but maybe a little rotation right up in here, just on the northwest or northeast side of Greensboro. It's weaker than it was earlier. So that area of the line has been downtrending. Still possible though, some small hail, 60-mile-an-hour winds. I think they're going to still keep warning a lot of this line segment. So the initial tornado warning around Irisburg has been canceled. Still watching this area of rotation around Swansonsville, Hawley's Mill, Bannister area. Still radar indicated tornado warning, so that's good news. There was a little suspicious CC drop. Now that the line of storms is clearing Winston-Salem, you can start to see a lot of these storm reports coming in. So this line does have a history of damaging winds with power lines down and trees down. and pretty consistently trees down from thunderstorm wind damage. One report down here had even a tree down and transformer resulting in a brush fire. So some significant severe thunderstorm wind damage. Oh, and let's get back that tornado warning, lower third. Area up here at Swanson's Mill, Collins, Turkey Fork, up towards Wheel and Chatham, and Red Eye and Gretna. Still watching this area rotation as it came across from Axton and Soapstone. But we're watching this area rotation right up in this area here. Just south of Collins, Swanson Mill, headed up towards Collins, Wheel, and Chatham. And we can switch sources, see if we get a different view from the other radar site. Yeah, there's still rotation down up in here. And you can see in the reflectivity how the storm now is creating a calm ahead here. So on the southern side of this calm ahead, we're seeing likely some pretty strong severe thunderstorm winds over Soapstone, headed towards Callahan Hills, and then also headed towards the Mount Herman and Danville areas. And then the points of rotation are up now in this calm ahead. One of the ones that's still kind of holding the strongest is around the Bannister area. There was another one further south, but I don't see that one as holding as strong. But this area around Swansonville, Bannister, Holly's Mill, up towards Flint Hill, Rondo, and Collins, or Callens, that's your area of rotation here. Now lifting up across Swansonville and Bannister. So generally headed towards the direction of Rondo and Flint Hill area. Please be in your safe space here as this tornado warning continues out. Still just radar indicated. But that's a nasty storm up in here. Not seeing anything in terms of non-meteorological targets up in this area. So that's a good sign. Still nothing significant on the ground that would loft the debris up to the level of the radar, but there could be some small circulations along this point in here with the rain and inflow wrapping in like this and then outflow wrapping out. It's hopefully going to cut itself off as this outflow on the south side here continues to gust out, but until it does, this area here is your tornadic part of the storm, right in the Bannister area along 57 just east of Turkey Fork and headed towards the Red Eye, Wheel, Chatham area. Please be in your safe spaces here for tornadoes. That is a interior room on the lowest level of the building, away from doors and windows. Put as many walls between you and the exterior as possible. If you have a basement or tornado shelter, that's even better. But at least on the lowest first floor of the building that you're on, that's often a bathroom, a closet that's interior. And still a couple other points of rotation. None have materialized to be as strong as the ones that we're watching right now around Bannister, but some other points along this line are worth watching as well. The rest of the line up towards Bedford and Alta Vista, right now near Monetta, has 60-mile-an-hour wind potential, and you can see back here towards Martinsburg there's also the damage reports coming in. So storm reports, more trees down. A lot of these damage reports are similar. They're trees down and some of them have power lines down. So be aware of that if you're going out and about tonight in these areas here. Large severe thunderstorm warning ahead of this arcing now bow echo. So this is going to warn all the way north and east to the Lynchburg area, Timberlake, Alta Vista, South Boston, Halifax, Brook Neal, all in Virginia. and still the Danville area. And then in northern North Carolina, the area is just north and east of Reidsville and near the Yanceyville area. The storms have dropped below severe limits around the Greensboro area, so that's good to see. Oh, there still is a severe thunderstorm warning for the areas north and east of Greensboro, but those are weakening, and I don't see much rotation in those. Still some hefty storms near Pittsboro in North Carolina, between Pittsboro and Siller City. And then a couple of other storms here towards Seven Lakes are worth watching. Down here by Seven Lakes and Whispering Pines, sub-severe thunderstorm, but being flagged as a special weather statement for up to 40-mile-an-hour winds. We can see the trend on that. That one's been around for a while, so it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be kind of maintaining its strength. It's not. It hasn't just like blown up or anything. It's, but it's kind of holding its own. As well as some strong storms with that had a little rotation, but I see less of it now as they came across from the South Carolina near Laurinburg and now headed up towards Rayford. Ones to watch, but they've stayed sub-severe. So right now, yeah, our only tornado warning is this area here. This developing calm ahead right near Wheel, Chatham, and Red Eye. Between Wheel and Collins or Callens near the Rondo area. You can see this area here is what we're watching between Wheel and Collins as it lifts its way up north and east towards Red Eye, towards Chatham, with certainly gusting winds out towards the Chatham, Mount Herman areas along US 29. And then if this continues to lift north and east, in the tornado warning is Gretna, Ridgeway, Red Eye. Just outside of it is Mount Airy, but you're in a larger severe thunderstorm warning that includes this whole line from near Roanoke and near Glasgow all the way through Lynchburg, Brookneal, Halifax, and South Boston in Virginia. So just one tornado warning right now. And it's this area here between Wheel and Rondo and Flint Hill that we're watching. It's a little more broad than it was earlier. Back when it was around Axton and Soapstone, it had a couple smaller couplets. Here you can also see the greens are slowly being replaced with gray, which indicates a little less inflow here. Even just a scan back, there's a little bit more of these greens, like towards Bannister here. So a little tighter couplet right in here by Bannister. But those have now dissipated some. Still seeing some in here between Rondo and Chatham. But not quite as tight as it was just a minute or two ago or a couple scans ago. Which is good news that this area rotation is a bit on a downtrend as it comes across the areas right around Chatham and Wheel. And they're going to allow that to, they're going to cancel that tornado warning. So they're seeing the same things that we did as far as the downtrend in the inflow and the broadening of the reds and green couplet here. Still this area we want to watch. It could tighten back up. We also have to watch other parts of the line segment gust out and do the similar thing. So there's another bit of rotation up here as this area punches out. We'll have to watch that as it comes towards Alta Vista, south of Huddleston. And then a little less strong up towards the I-81 corridor. So far these severe warnings have stayed south of and east of I-81 here in Virginia. Okay, well, there's no tornado warning. We can get a little wider picture of things. So we have the strong line of thunderstorms between Roanoke and Lynchburg, all the way down now east of Greensboro, between Greensboro and Durham. This is your area here of potential spin-up tornadoes, as well as gusty winds up to 60 miles an hour, and some small hail in there as well. You can now see the storms developed as they came out of the Appalachians here in west central North Carolina, and you can see all these little black logos here. These are all thunderstorm reports. Most of them are all trees down, power lines down, things like that. So we've seen kind of the storm progress as it's lined out here, and definitely created an area of severe weather behind it here. You can see all these severe reports. Again, a lot of them are the severe thunderstorm wind damage. We haven't seen any big debris balls or anything as far as the tornado warnings. So a couple interesting CC drops. There was the one observed radar confirmed tornado. I haven't seen any damage reports come out of this area. It was that area that was north and east of Wilkesboro, and not seeing anything. So we just won't know for a while. But otherwise, especially these more populated areas around Winston-Salem, we're starting to see these damage reports come through with trees down. Still another hefty thunderstorm developing out here by Lexington. So if you do have some loose tree and debris that got blown around with the last storm, that could be an issue even if it's a non-severe thunderstorm. So watch out for some additional limbs to come down, especially if you're in an area with trees. This area here has been extended out for 3/4 inch hail, 60 mile an hour winds. This is that cluster of storms that's come up with also its own severe thunderstorm wind reports. It's now between Siller City and Pittsburgh, and moving northeast, affecting areas from Swepsonville, Hillsborough, and now Durham is in a severe thunderstorm warning. So Durham, please be in a stable structure. Even though there's no tornado warning, with 60 mile an hour winds, it's a good idea to stay away from the windows. And that area is generally coming up this way towards the Durham area. So this looks like it's going to at least skirt the Raleigh-Durham area, and areas especially on the west side of Raleigh towards Cary, Morrisville, Bethesda, Blands, Chapel Hill, and Durham. You guys are more in line for the direct impacts at the moment, but some of these areas down here towards Pittsburgh will likely make their way up towards the Morrisville area. And still some sub-severe storms down here. Just taking a look around the Carolinas a little bit. Still some heavy rain in the areas in southern Ohio, eastern Kentucky, and West Virginia. That's prompted a ton of flood warnings for flash flooding in the Charleston area and points south of Charleston, points here east of Pikeville in Kentucky, all the way up the western Appalachians through Parkersburg, Marietta, and into Wheeling, and then Pittsburgh. Western parts of Pittsburgh still have a flash flood emergency between Pittsburgh and Moon Township. So please, if you're traveling in this area, please take any of the local emergency management actions. Don't go through flooded waters. Turn around, don't drown. If you're north of Pittsburgh, some general thunderstorms up towards Kittanning and Toby. Eventually headed up towards the 80 corridor. This area has just had rounds of heavy rain, some embedded thunderstorms that have been heavy but non-severe, and there was a tornado watch for most of West Virginia. That's been allowed to expire, and I don't think we had any tornado warnings in that watch area. We had a few severe thunderstorm tornado possibles. There was one storm in particular I was watching all afternoon. It was trying to get tighter rotation, but it never could as it came across West Virginia. Meanwhile, back here we have severe thunderstorms approaching the Raleigh-Durham area, and then now starting to leave the Greensboro area. Most of the strongest part of this line is now in an area in Virginia between Danville and Timberlake and Bedford. This line has had a history of damaging winds as well as a history of potential tornado spin-ups. So if you're out ahead of this line, South Boston, Lynchburg, that area, please heed these warnings and find a sturdy structure. We're going to check again. We had a couple tornado warnings a few minutes ago. Still some circulations to watch, but nothing that's super tight right now. This was the area that had the tornado warning earlier towards Wheel and Chatham. If there's a part that's the tightest, it'd be this area around Shelva, with some greens and reds here, but still very broad. A lot of gray. We're not seeing the bright greens with bright reds. So you can see why they dropped the tornado warning. And then a little notching up in here by Leesville is worth watching. You can see the heavy winds in this line. They're now approaching Alta Vista, Gretna, if not in it now, a matter of seconds to minute. Bedford's in it now. This will be quickly approaching Timberlake and Lynchburg. And then back down in the Raleigh-Durham area, a little bit of rotation right in here by Mandel. That is worth watching right in here. So far, this southern segment and cluster of storms hasn't had any tornado warnings. It's had tornado possible tag on it earlier, but so far this area has been less conducive, it seems, to the rotation. However, I'm getting a little bit more concerned with this little area here by Mandale. We'll see if that intensifies anymore. But you have some brighter reds in here and then some brighter greens right here. Still a bit broad. There's still, like we saw earlier, there's gray. So the greens and reds aren't immediately touching. But that area right there is worth watching. That's going to be lifting up from Mandel up towards the areas around Stony Brook and Lake Woods. Eventually, see if we can get a little area out ahead of that. Eventually, areas west sides of Chapel Hill, that would be an area to watch. Further up the line, still a couple areas to watch here around Gretna and then Alta Vista. And even if you're not going to get a tornadic circulation, these are heavy winds with a history of tree and power line damages. So that's all coming into the areas right around Danville, Chatham now, Gretna now, Alta Vista, and then coming towards the Lynchburg and Timberlake areas in Virginia. Greensboro now clear of the severe weather, but you can see another damage report for severe thunderstorm wind damage, multiple trees down on Battleground Avenue north of Greensboro. I think the strongest storms did go north of Greensboro, so that ties in. And then a few more storms back here. Now I have a special weather statement for gusty winds and pea-sized hail. But again, this area has had the line of severe storms has gone through this area, so even a sub-severe thunderstorm complex like this area can knock some more tree limbs and things down. That's anything that's gotten loose from the previous round of storms. So just watch those. They're behind the highest level of instability, so they're probably not going to elevate much, but they have a potential to cause some damage from the loosened things. Still an area around Ray, Gretna, chalk level. Watching that area a little bit as that area kicks out, and then a little area around Alta Vista for any tornadic development. Otherwise, the line seems to be calming down a bit as it's gusting out here, coming towards Timberlake. So these are heavy winds here coming towards Timberlake, probably eventually up into the Lynchburg area. And then gusty winds here south and now just east of Gretna and Chatham. You can see those here pushing out and surging out. Severe thunderstorm warnings far out ahead. South Boston, Halifax, Brookneal, Natalie, up towards the Lynchburg area. And then watching more storms, this second cluster of storms down near Stepsonville, Hillsborough, with a severe thunderstorm warning for the Durham area. That also has 60-mile-an-hour winds and a little bit of rotation. Still see it right in here by White Cross, but it looks like it's downtrended a bit. Yeah, it was a little better there a scan or two back, and now it's gotten weaker and broader. So that's a good sign there. Probably just going to continue as a severe thunderstorm warning. Not seeing much rotation down further, as these storms are lifting up towards the Durham and Hillsborough area. Power lines down even near Roanoke, Rocky Mount. Thunderstorm winds blew a tree down on US 220. And then a few more of these severe thunderstorm wind damage reports near Martinsville. And then a bunch back towards the Winston-Salem, Greensboro area. Still none in that area where we had the observed tornado warning. And you can see they've shaved more of this tornado warning off. So areas now in Winston-Salem are now clear of that tornado warning. Or tornado watch, sorry. Still tornado watch for the areas in North Carolina between High Point and Durham, and south to Pinehurst, and then up along the line here between Rocky Mount and Lynchburg, and then out to the areas south of Farmville near Keysville. Still has a tornado watch. We've in general seen a downtrend in the tornado warnings, so that's been a good sign. Still a couple points of interest up in here, but those seem to be trending down as well for those little areas of rotation. You can see when this was tornado warned, back towards Wheel and point south, you can see a little more vigorous couplet here of the reds and greens, and how that's broadened out and shrunk, and now just a little bit left near Gretna, and that's shrinking even more in the last scan. And then still a little point here near Alta Vista, but that has also, you can see back a couple scans, a few more reds and greens, but that has also come down. So good news there for those areas of rotation in this line. The line also looks a little less vigorous here. As you can see, a couple scans back, a lot more reds in the line towards Danville, and back even more, a couple little purple points. Those have dropped a bit, especially this northern point between Bedford and Timberlake has come down some. And the reflectivity, still severe thunderstorms approaching the Timberlake and Lynchburg area, as well as all the way down through Alta Vista and to the Danville area. Areas north and east of Greensboro should be clearing out here. Up towards Reedsville and Eden. And then we just have that other cluster of storms that's riding north and east near the Durham area. So it's approaching Chapel Hill now with some gusty winds. We can check and see. Not seeing anything super crazy, but we're not looking right at the radar site, so seeing a bit of a downtrend on some of those storms here. We can go back and you can see also on these storms a lot more reds in here, in the deeper reds between Pittsboro and Swepsonville. A couple scans back, and then take it now to the current, and there's more of just the yellows and oranges, so that area does seem to be decreasing in intensity too. Still some pretty strong storms coming between Danville and Alta Vista, and then Brookneal and South Boston. This area is all headed up towards the Lynchburg area. Still a couple little points of interest, but that's been on a downtrend as well, so that's good to see. I think the radar here is still out at Wakefield, so we'll keep using this radar. What I'm going to do is I'm probably going to wait until the top of the hour here and just see if everything continues to downtrend. We'll call it a night after a busy week of severe weather, as well as I was out chasing the eclipse on earlier this week, and there was severe weather on the day of the eclipse. I didn't get back to stream in time to do, but so a busy week of severe weather, and looks like another busy week next week. In particular, Monday already has a SPC outlook for the areas in the Texas Panhandle and Oklahoma and south central Kansas. We'll get some more data on that in the next couple days, and get some more clarification from SPC on those outlooks. But something to be aware of, even on the 5-day outlook. But especially once it gets to like a 3-day outlook, then we can really kind of hone in on a severe weather threat. But right now, tentatively, if that threat continues and gets confirmed a little more by the SPC in the next couple days, probably a stream on Monday afternoon and evening, after storms fire along a dry line along the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, West Oklahoma border, and then move east from there. So right now it looks possibly like an all hazards severe weather threat, and we'll cover that one too. Areas here surging towards Lynchburg and Timberlake, you're going to have heavy winds here in just a matter of minutes. Just double checking the line here. The rotation point has continued to decrease in this area around Mount Airy, Renton, up towards Grit. Still a bit of a calm ahead in here, but you can kind of see it in the wind profile and in the reflectivity, but it's not as tight of rotation where it needed the warning earlier. Just another area of surging winds. So definitely some thunderstorms with surging winds along this line that are worth tracking. Again, just because we're done with the stream doesn't mean that the weather just ends. So please take any warnings from local media and the Weather Service with seriousness. The areas around Hillsboro and Chapel Hill and Durham are in the severe weather now. But yeah, this line is also on a downtrend. So that's good. It's going to continue to be downtrending as it moves further east in the mid-Atlantic, in the Carolinas and Virginia. Uh, I can check here very quickly and see if there's any mesoscale discussions left. Not seeing any distinctive ones, so I think it looks like the SPC is thinking that the tornadic threat is going to be confined to kind of this area that's left in the tornado watch. I don't see any mesoscale discussions of any downstream watches. That doesn't mean there can't be one issued if stuff picks up, but what I saw on models and what the SPC saw was that threat from the storms developing along the Appalachians and basically in this area here for the tornadic development, and seems to be downtrending. So pay attention to the warnings, especially if you're in this area from Lynchburg down through the Raleigh-Durham area, and then watching some vigorous, strong storms, but non-severe back towards High Point and Thomasville. But that will do it for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in, and hopefully we helped out a little bit with giving you guys some clarity to the watches and warnings and severe weather going on here. It's been a busy couple days. So thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next stream, likely on Monday, covering parts of the Midwest. That area again, I guess, real quick, that SPC has like a day 5 outlook for is in this area here. So storms are going to fire along the west side of this, and then right now the highest severe weather probability is in this circled area here. But we'll see how that changes and expands or contracts in the next few days. But overall, I would expect probably some bad weather from West Texas Panhandle all the way up. I think they do have a lesser threat somewhere like this as well. So we'll get some more clarity on the 3-day outlook and go from there for streams next week. But there's a look just at the remaining severe thunderstorms here at the top of the hour, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central, and you can see some of those thunderstorm wind reports in those black marks behind it. So if you're out ahead of this line, Lynchburg, Raleigh-Durham, Cary, maybe as far as the 95 corridor towards Richmond, definitely take any warnings with seriousness, because this line does have a history of knocking down trees and power lines and causing some severe thunderstorm wind damage. Thank you guys. Have a great and safe evening.